everybody. Tonight we are debating whether or not Christianity is true, and we are starting right now. Ladies and gentlemen, thrilled to have you here for another epic debate. Tonight's going to be a fun one. I want to let you know, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, our goal, our vision is to host debates on science, politics, and religion in the most fair, neutral way possible. The channel itself has no views, no positions, anything like that at all, other than that we value debate. And so, want to let you know though, if you do love debates, if you're sick in the head like us and you love controversial debates, want to let you know we have many more coming up. So for example, at the bottom right of your screen, Matt Dillahunty will be coming on next week to debate Christian apologist Ben Fisher. So if you want a reminder for that debate, hit that subscribe button and we'll hopefully see you there for that one. With tonight's debate, want to let you know it'll be a fairly flexible format. So we're going to have the affirmative, namely Cliffe and Stuart will be going first. They'll have about 12 minutes divided amongst each other that they can use for their opening. Then the same for our atheist friends, and then we'll go into 50 to 60 minutes of open dialogue, and then Q&A from you. So if you happen to have any questions, feel free to fire them into the live chat. If you tag me with @ModernDayDebate, makes it easier for me to get every question in that Q&A list. Super chat is also an option, in which case it'll bump your question to the top of the list and also give you the opportunity to make a comment if you'd like to do that instead. So with that, I want to ask that you be your regular friendly selves. We are very honored to have our guests with us tonight, so I'm going to introduce them and give them a chance to share what you can find at their link, which is in the description already, folks. So if you would like to hear more from our speakers, you can find those links down below. We'll start with Cliffe and Stuart. Thanks, the father-son duo, the team. That is, this, you could say, folks, this is an interesting kind of, you could say, rivalry where basically our guests, Cliffe and Stuart, debated TJump and Aron, I think it was maybe about a month ago, and that was an epic debate on whether or not there's an immaterial soul. And in that debate, the challenge came up to debate whether or not Christianity is true. And so they are back. We're thrilled to have you guys back. Thanks so much, Cliffe and Stuart. If you'd like to share what people can find at your link in the description, thanks for being here, guys.
Appreciate you, James. We just outside New York City, our YouTube link is Ask Cliffe or Give Me an Answer on YouTube. And there you'll just find a bunch of different debates. We have, I think, over 450 debates on college campuses. And we've also just started debates on YouTube channel with British intellectuals, many atheist agnostics. So that's what you'll find there.
Absolutely. We're thrilled to have you back. And with that, we'll kick it over to TJump and Aron Raw. Thrilled to have you back as well, gentlemen. Tom, glad to see you again. It feels like it's been like 2 weeks. What can people expect to find at your link in the description?
I do debates and conversations with professors and philosophers and academics from around the world on reasons to believe in a God, and flat Earth, pseudoscience, and all other kinds of topics. And you can find James OnlyFans on my Discord if you're interested.
That's right. He has a vivid imagination. And we'll kick it over to Aron Raw. Thrilled to have you back again, Aron. The floor is all yours. If you'd like to share what people can find at your link.
Well, I do some science education and also secular activism, and these are trying times for secular activists, especially with the new Supreme Court justice who seemed completely unaware that there was a separation of church and state, and she still doesn't believe in it. So you can imagine how busy I am. You can reach me at patreon.com/ARONRA. I do this full time, and I need all the help I can get. So if you can donate, please do.
You got it. Thanks so much. All four of you gentlemen, thrilled to have you here. And with that, we will kick it into the opening statements. So, Cliffe and Stuart, I have the timer set over here for about 12 minutes. The floor is all yours.
James, thank you so much. Is Christianity true? I would never put my faith in Christianity. Christianity has been used to justify the Crusades, witch burning. Christianity has a horrible history in many ways. But Jesus Christ is totally different. Now, the question is, really, is Jesus Christ true? Is he reliable? Many people today say, no, truth does not exist. Objective truth does not exist. Well, that is a truth claim in itself. It's self-contradictory. If you're going to tell me that objective truth does not exist, I'm going to say to you, well, you just made a truth claim, a truth statement. Obviously, truth exists. By truth, we mean reality. We live in reality, or we choose to not live in reality. Now, there are different forms of knowledge that help us get in touch with reality. One is scientific knowledge, which is based on the repeatability of an experiment. It's based on a study of process. So there's scientific knowledge. But there's also historical knowledge, which has nothing to do with the repeatability of an experiment. You don't get George Washington back to be inaugurated first president of the United States. Instead, you know that there is such a thing as reliable eyewitness testimony. And that is what historical knowledge is based on. You also have experiential knowledge. Your use of reason and logic, experience can lead you to truth, to that which is real. So is Jesus Christ the truth? Well, first of all, the Gospels claim to be accurate historical presentations of this historical figure, Jesus of Nazareth. Now, whenever I'm confronted by a document that claims to be historical, I'm a skeptic. But I'm not a cynic, because if I don't learn lessons from history, I'm going to repeat the mistakes of history. If I don't learn lessons from hypocritical Christians, I'm going to repeat those hypocritical mistakes, probably. I don't want to do that. So the question is, what tests do you and I use to determine historicity? For myself, I use 4. Internal consistency, meaning by that, are there contradictions within the text to point to massive confusion on the part of the authors? Secondly, literary genre, literary style. What is the style of the document? Is it fairy tale, mythology, once upon a time in the land of Nod, Wink and Blink and Nod took a boat ride? Or is it historical narrative, meaning by that, is it written as eyewitness reportage? At this time, in this place, with these people around, Jesus said this and did that. That's the literary style of the document. Third test is archaeology. Does archaeology verify Bethlehem, Nazareth, Sea of Galilee, Jerusalem, Rome, or are these fictitious places? And then fourth test is, how many manuscripts do we have? What's the manuscript evidence to support that we have what the eyewitnesses or those who knew the eyewitnesses really wrote? If someone does not accept the New Testament as historically reliable, I have no problem with that. But I want to know, what are your tests that you use to determine historical reliability? And if you're a total historical cynic, I don't know where the conversation can go. I think historical knowledge is a legitimate form of knowledge. And I think we have to, as thinking people, have tests that we use to determine the historical reliability of any document, be it the New Testament, be it US history, African history, Asian history, whatever you're talking about. Now, I don't ask people to accept the Gospels as the Word of God. I could never show that any book is the Word of God, so I wouldn't want to waste your time and my time trying. But instead, I think the use of those 4 tests, internal consistency, literary style, archaeological evidence, and manuscript evidence, clearly points to the historical reliability of the New Testament. So simply read the New Testament as history and ask yourself, as you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the 4 Gospels, does the historical evidence of the way Jesus lived, what he taught, how he died, and how he rose from the dead point to the veracity of Christ, or does it not? And you decide based on the historical evidence. For myself, when I read about how Jesus taught, I'm blown out of the water. Robert Coles, professor emeritus at Harvard University, points out all the teachings on ethics over the past 2,000 years are simply footnotes to the Sermon on the Mount. Ethical genius in Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7, the Sermon on the Mount. The teachings of Christ have the ring of truth. Secondly, not only did Jesus teach these amazingly high ethical standards, he lived up to them. In John chapter 8, he could look into the faces of his enemies and say, which one of you can prove me guilty of sin? In 1 John chapter 3, verse 5, the Apostle John, who was Christ's closest friend, could write about him, in him is no sin. And when he was bleeding and dying on a cross, he prayed for his enemies, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's the essence of tolerance. Therefore, for a follower of Christ to be intolerant is highly hypocritical. Because if you claim to be following Christ, the one who, as he's bleeding and dying on a cross, prays to forgive his enemies, and if you're intolerant, that's a contradiction. That's hypocrisy. So the lifestyle of Christ demands respect. And then thirdly, the way he died demands respect. At the moment of his most excruciating pain, the love that flowed from him for his mother, for his enemies, was amazing. He taught love your enemies, but then he lived it out at the moment of his most excruciating pain and agony. But fourthly, and most importantly, 3 days after, he's buried in a tomb, a very well-known tomb belonging to Joseph of Arimathea, a well-known politician of that day. That tomb is empty. And over a period of 40 days, there are many resurrection appearances that people claim that they have. And then you've got a bunch of Jewish people moving the Sabbath to Sunday, which is the celebration of the resurrection of Christ. And you have many of these people who claim to have seen Christ, like John and James, dying not for their belief. They died for what they claimed to have seen, the dead Christ risen from the dead. So when you put together his lifestyle, his ethical teachings, the way he died at the moment of his most excruciating pain and agony, loving and forgiving his enemies, and then fourthly, the empty tomb, the resurrection appearances, the birth of the first century church, a bunch of Jews at first who were not going to worship on Sunday, but who transfer their worship from the Sabbath to Sunday because of Christ's resurrection. And when you have them being willing to die, not for a belief, they were willing to die for what they claimed to have seen, the dead Christ risen from the dead. The evidence is that Jesus Christ is true. Stuart?
When I assess a worldview, so something like Christianity, I assess it hopefully not just with my rationale, my reasoning, my intellect, but instead as a whole person. I'm made up of not just chemicals, but I'm also made up of more than that, intangibles. Things like love, things like a respect and honor for beauty, things like forgiveness, sacrifice, virtues, you name it. I assess based off of, does this make emotional sense, this worldview? Does it make cultural sense, psychological, relational, and also does it make rational? So it's potentially very attractive, and I hope we don't fall into simply buying into the reasonable intellectual side of giving the case of whether Christianity is reasonable or not, because I think Christianity we have to take wholesale, understanding the whole person, that we are complex individuals. That's why I accept Christianity as a worldview, as rational. If we were just here to talk about the reason and the intellect, I don't think Christianity would really stand up. It wouldn't stack up. I don't think any worldview truly would. So with that, I think atheism has some tremendous holes, which when I was checking out atheism and especially agnosticism, I saw these holes and it pushed me more towards the rationality of the Christian faith. Now, one of those figures in college for me was Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche, the ghost at the atheist feast, we could call it, was the one who talked about how if you believe that there is no God, God is dead, then you better be willing to live with the ramifications, to be honest. And if you are living for human rights, for love, for sacrifice, for helping the poor, then you are simply calling yourself an atheist when you are a Christian. And so typically atheists don't want to interact too much with Nietzsche or Camus or Sartre or many of the existentialists because they take their atheism so logically in consistency, and they basically say, here is the end point. We're not going to stop halfway and just say, okay, here is somehow our atheism just dressed up in a way that's more so secular humanism. It's more so, and that has problems too for me because it steals from Christianity. And most of my atheist friends have totally acknowledged that in an understanding of humanism. Secondly, the defective father theory. My atheist friends do not like when I bring this up, but I did not bring it up. Sigmund Freud did when he talked about how typically atheists, not all atheists, he may have been alluding to all atheists. He said atheists were those who often had fathers who were absent or died early on in their lives or adolescence, a little bit later. And so I looked a little bit into this kind of study of Freud's, and it's interesting how there were 350 members of the American Association for the Advancement of Atheism that were interviewed with the intent of understanding the possible causes and the reasons for the atheistic belief. More than 90% were men, not surprising. 78% of atheists in the US are white males. But of these 320 men, almost all of them report having lost a parent during childhood or had poor relationships with one or both parents. These 350 atheists also, not only that, had a way lower score in terms of an unhappy childhood because of this type of conflict. Now, why do I bring that up? I don't necessarily see, it's the I got to be careful, obviously, with the correlation causation fallacy. So I'm not saying that every atheist has this problem, but I am saying when I have conversations with college students and professors on university campuses, so often if I ask a question like, if Christianity were rational, true, would you believe in it? Many will say, no, I wouldn't. And I say, oh, wow, but it's true. Why wouldn't you believe in it? Because of their emotional resistance, their anger towards the idea of Christianity, of Christ, of a God who supposedly is asking them for authorship, rulership over their entire lives. So there's the emotional side that you have to deal with, you have to struggle with. Langdon Gilkey is a big hero of mine. He was at Harvard. I think he was at Harvard about 40 years ago. And he went into a prisoner of war camp in China. And he was a secular humanist in China. And basically, he went into this prisoner of war camp. There was zero space in this prisoner of war camp. And there were a lot of people, he went in as a secular humanist, saying, based off of reason, rationality alone, and the goodness of humankind, we are going to be able to figure this thing out and get through it together. Just loving each other. Clearly, that did not happen, Gilkey said. He ended up becoming a theist, ditched his secular humanism because he saw the intractable fallenness and sinful nature of human beings. Rationality was not able to help people in that camp live out lives of cohesion to get through the camp. Thanks, James.
Thank you very much. We will kick it over to our non-theist friends as well now. So I've got the timer reset for 12 minutes. The floor is all yours, gentlemen.
Okay, so the topic today is Christianity true? And the best evidence we have for Christianity, I guess, would be the Bible. And so we're questioning, is the Bible a reliable source of evidence? And if we're going based off of the consensus of historians, the answer is no. The Bible consists of not eyewitness testimony at all. It's accounts written 20, 30, 40, 70 years after the fact, which is incredibly unreliable just based off the time frame. But even if we assume they were eyewitness testimonies written the exact moment it happened, it would still not be reliable. Eyewitness testimony is a form of conceptual evidence, so it can only justify conceptual conclusions. Like, for example, if I said, I'm imagining a unicorn, it would be reasonable to believe me because that is a conceptual conclusion about something in my head. But if I told you I saw a unicorn, like a real living, breathing unicorn, it would be unreasonable to believe me at all. This is opposed to something like if I said I saw a dog, that would be reasonable to believe me. The difference between these two claims is that dogs have an implicit empirical basis. There's lots of scientific evidence we have for dogs, their DNA, taxonomy, phylogeny, genetic makeup, what they're allergic to, how to train them. We have lots and lots of empirical evidence of dogs implicit in the word dog that I just haven't mentioned directly, whereas we have none of that in the case of unicorns. Therefore, it's reasonable to believe me if I told you I saw a dog because of the combination of two different types of evidence, the conceptual evidence of my testimony in addition to the empirical evidence that is implicit in the statement. The reason it's not reasonable to believe I saw a unicorn is because the only evidence is my conceptual testimony, which is unreliable. This is the case in history as well. Any case of something that occurred in history is only reasonable to believe if it's something that has an implicit empirical basis, like I saw a dog, or like that person killed that person, or that person was crucified, or that person walked into a city. But no testimony from history is accepted for things that have no empirical basis, such as miracles, magic, mythical creatures, the paranormal, the supernatural, or UFOs. None of those are justified based on any amount of historical testimony, no matter what, because testimony cannot justify the existence of things that have no empirical basis. For that, you would need to have some kind of empirical verification today that such things do and can occur. Therefore, it's not reasonable to believe any of the historical accounts of the Bible for any miraculous claims like the resurrection or any of the miracles Jesus did, which is the consensus in history. As I can quote some famous Christian historians, Michael Licona, most historians and biblical scholars hold to it that the study of miracle claims lies outside of the bounds of a historian acting within their professional capacity. It is not the case that historians consider the testimony of these ancient sheep herders to be evidence that miracles actually existed in the past. So no, you cannot use the testimony of the New Testament to indicate the existence of miracles. Secondly, most of the Old Testament is demonstrably false. Most historians consider the Moses, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Cain, and Abel, Daniel, including the entire Exodus story, to all be fabrications made up as foundational myths of the Abrahamic religions. None of them actually occurred. So all of the entire basis of the Christian faith and sin, Adam and Eve, the apple, the falling of humanity, all of that is complete fabrication that we know is false due to things like evolution and discoveries by Darwin and geology and cosmology. It's clearly false. So we know that both the Old Testament and the New Testament are not reliable sources of data, as confirmed by the consensus of historians in the field. We know that testimony does not work to justify miracle claims. So no, we are not justified in believing that somehow there is a magical being that rose from the dead based off of a book written 2,000 years ago by non-eyewitnesses 70 years after the fact. And even if they were, that wouldn't be justified. So we can conclude that based off of these facts, Christianity, it's unreasonable to believe Christianity is true based off of the Bible alone. And so we'd have to consider, are there any other factors? In order to differentiate, in order to be evidence that Christianity is true, you need some way to differentiate imagination from reality. And that's what evidence is. Evidence is whatever can accurately differentiate between, is this imaginary or is this real? In science, the way we do that is novel testable predictions, which may not be the only way. If you could provide a different way, that's perfectly fine too. But an acceptable measure of evidence is novel testable prediction. So if Christianity was true, a good basis of evidence for it would be if you could say, if I believe in God, this is the case, and if we can do this experiment to get this result, and it happens, that would be good evidence. And the fact that Christianity has been unable to provide any such examples is good evidence that it's just imaginary. The point of providing evidence that can differentiate imagination from reality is that we can come up with infinitely many imaginary explanations of anything, like what knocked over that cup. Well, maybe it was the wind, maybe somebody knocked the table over, maybe it was the squirrels, maybe it was invisible aliens, magical specters, magical unicorns, a god. You can just make up infinitely many imaginary ways to explain what knocked over that cup. And so we need some way to filter out all those imaginary ones. And until you can do that, it's reasonable to conclude that whatever your explanation is, it's imaginary until demonstrated otherwise. So until theists can provide a way to differentiate imagination from reality, then it's reasonable to conclude that their explanation is purely imaginary and nothing but something come up with in their heads.
I guess it's my turn to jump in at this point. All right. Well, at first I wanted to say that I had a good relationship with both of my parents, as I think most other atheists did. Matt Dillahunty and Seth Andrews did, both of them, and most of the other atheists I've ever known. The Christians in this debate appear to be arguing against imaginary atheists, making arguments I've never heard any atheist make. And I've spoken at dozens of atheist conferences around the world, so I'm very surprised to hear some of these things. For example, I would say that objective truth definitely does exist, and I can't even imagine an atheist saying otherwise. The truth is what the facts are, not whatever else we might rather pretend instead. And facts are objectively verifiable by definition, so truth would be as well. And the Gospels, as TJump said, are hardly reliable as historically accurate. They constantly contradict each other. I mean, who owned the land that Judas died on? You know, and with what money did they buy it? Whoever bought it? Because Judas died. There's so many different options there. And Jesus died both before and after the Passover. He was born in two different places, raised in two different places. He was born both before the death of Herod and after the census of Quirinus, which was a decade later. And so there's many aspects of the story of Jesus and the character of Jesus were obviously adapted to, like, appropriate John the Baptist's following and some other people's following. And that's why his history was fudged a little bit, so that Jesus has much the same childhood as Moses did, who also was adopted his bit of childhood from Sargon of Akkad. You know, they all just kind of like repeat these same stories. And I remember a meeting with a high priest of a Wicca coven who said that his patron deity was Dionysus. And he read the story of how Dionysus turned springs of water, so that the springs of the earth bring forth wine instead of water. It's a much better trick than the Penn and Teller thing where you just pour water into a jug and pour wine out. You know, any magician can do that, but it's a much better trick to have the springs of the earth bring forth wine. And it reminded me that every story that we hear about Jesus is taken from some other myth that already existed many centuries earlier. Dionysus, Prometheus, and a number of others. So why would God make his own son, if God existed, which I believed at that time, why would God make his own son as a sequel to a common human idea that was already in all of these other stories? So either Dionysus really could turn water into wine just like Jesus did, or, and this is infinitely more probable, Jesus couldn't really do it either. The character of Jesus is obviously based on a handful of fictional characters and possibly some real characters too. I've heard Christians name a whole bunch of different Jesusii. Jesus of Damnius, oh, that's our guy. And Jesus ben Ananias, oh, this is our guy too. No, they're definitely talking about different people. Josephus talked about 19 and arguably 20 Jesuses. And they're not the ones that, if you could get into a time machine and go find Jesus, which I don't think is possible, not even if you spoke Aramaic, could you find Jesus. With a TARDIS, could you find him? But let's pretend that you could. If you could find one guy on which most of the legend was based, you're never going to find anybody who had the undead wandering the streets of Judea, because that's just one of the many inconsistencies with the Bible. All the hours of darkness when Jesus supposedly died that was not recorded anywhere in the world, because none of that happened. If you could find that Jesus, the one guy central to that story, or upon which most of the story was based, if there was a living character on which it was based, and you bring him forward and show him Jesus Christ Superstar, he would not recognize that story was about him. It'd be much the same thing as if you brought Robin Hood or King Arthur back in time, and I'm not entirely sure you could find either of them either. But then the biggest problem with Christianity is the impossible dichotomy that you're given an impossible promise of a posthumous reward if you buy the bullshit. If you buy into the entire story without question, without reservation, without reason, then you get all the way on the far end. You can kiss the colon of God for all eternity, forever and ever and ever, trapped on a cloud, playing a harp and praising a being with obviously a hugely, well, he's a very sensitive and narcissistic character. And he can read your mind, so you better be thinking nice thoughts. Always think nice thoughts. It's good that you did that, Johnny. It's really good. And then the other end of the spectrum is you get the threat of a fate worse than death for anybody who doesn't believe. There's no intermediate. We know that most things fall into the bell curve. Most people, and whether it's religion or politics or whatever, most people sit in the bell curve. They're not in the extremes. Most people are down toward the middle. But Christianity doesn't allow that. There's only extreme this and extreme that. You either get infinite bliss and joy, which would still be
30 more
maddening
seconds
in your first million years, or you get infinite eternal punishment, the stick and the carrot. And it's obviously not what a God would want. And if he really existed, these are obviously the lies that desperate wanna-believers want to make you believe with.
Thanks so much. We will kick it into open discussion mode. Thanks so much, gentlemen, and the floor is all yours.
Yeah, I have a question real quick. You guys mentioned that Jesus's ethical theory was revolutionary, but as far as I know, Jesus said nothing original. All of the things Jesus espoused predated Jesus, like the golden rule specifically came from Hinduism before Jesus and Jainism before Hinduism. I don't know of anything unique that Jesus did ethically that didn't exist before that.
Yeah, exactly. The golden rule, for example, which was taken from other religions prior to that, because a whole lot of different philosophies already had this. So humanism didn't borrow squat from Christianity. The only thing we would have borrowed is an irrational belief. You either believe us or we'll kill you, and that's it.
Two things. I mean, you're right on the majority of that, but the two you're missing is, one, completely unique to Christianity, is love your enemies.
No.
Second one, overcome evil with good.
No. You haven't read the
unique.
Bhagavad Gita. I'm sorry, no. Krishna is a badass predecessor to Jesus. Krishna did everything Jesus did much better than Jesus did it. And yeah, the whole love your neighbor thing, Krishna already did that.
Where does Krishna say love your enemies? Not your neighbor. Enemies.
It wasn't one of the things that I quoted.
Very
but
different.
I quoted a bunch of things out of the Bhagavad Gita. I'm like, well, this is exactly what Jesus said. I did the same thing with Dionysus. When Dionysus calls himself the fruit of the vine, where have I heard that before? Right? So, I mean, all of these things are gleaned from this elder mythology and then just sort of stapled onto Jesus.
No, sir. I've read the Bhagavad Gita, and it does not say to love your enemy. You're wrong. That is
Yes, it does.
totally unique with Jesus. Second thing that's totally unique with Jesus is grace. The whole basis of Hinduism is work off your bad karma through a cycle of reincarnations, And eventually, if you work hard enough, you will attain nirvana.
But that's
Jesus
not at all.
Christ
That's
says you
not
will
in the
never
Bhagavad
attain
Gita.
heaven by your own works. It
But
is a
that's not
gift
in the
from
Bhagavad
God.
Gita.
That's the
Bhagavad-
grace of God versus religion, which is based on works. That's a radical contradiction.
But the Bhagavad Gita does not talk about that. The Bhagavad Gita instead talks about fulfilling your caste role, which is why you're supposed to go to war with your own family and friends, because it doesn't matter that you kill these bodies because they're just going to come back again. So you're not able to kill anybody permanently.
Hinduism talks about working off bad karma through a cycle of reincarnations and eventually attaining nirvana. Jesus Christ says you can never work your way to heaven. It is a gift that God gives you by grace.
Grace. And what does that mean? It goes back to what I said before. Now, admittedly, there is a difference between Hinduism and Christianity, because you do have the Krishna consciousness. If you're with the bhakti, you can achieve heaven in their perspective. And with Christianity, it's just you believe what I say because I said so without question, and then you get the reward. And that's it.
No, that's not fair. That's so dishonest, it's scary.
How is it dishonest? I don't say things that are dishonest. That's why I'm not a believer.
You are misrepresenting Jesus Christ.
So you're telling me that there is a way that a non-believer can be a good person and get into heaven?
I'm telling you that Abraham's going to be in heaven, and Abraham never heard the word Jesus Christ. To the best of his ability, Abraham put his faith in God, and Hebrews chapter 11 talks about Abraham.
And Abraham was Jewish.
An incredible man of faith.
And yet the Christians have appropriated Abraham to say that he's going to be going to Christian heaven. And in the Quran, it says that Abraham is going to...
Chapter 11 says that.
You mind if I
in the Quran, it says that he's Muslim. Abraham is going to the Muslim heaven.
I wanted to go back to that point you mentioned earlier, that the uniqueness of Jesus saying, love thy enemy. So I just found 6 quotes that predate Jesus. Do not return evil unto your adversary. Requite with kindness to the one who does evil to you. Maintain justice for your enemy. The Akkadian Council of Wisdom, circa 2000 BC. Buddhism, in the world, hate never yet dispelled hate. Only love dispel hate. This is the law, ancient exhaustible. The Dhammapada from mentioned Buddhism. Return love for hatred. Otherwise, when a great hatred is reconciled, some of it will surely remain. How can this end in goodness? Taoist Tai Xiang King Ping, circa 200 BC. So no, that is definitely not originated in Jesus at all.
Yes, it is, because love your enemy is reach out for your enemy. It's not a question of don't return hate for hate. It's when Christ calls us to love, he is calling us to take the initiative and to do good for others, even those who have hurt us in the past.
Okay, not the Samaritans, because they're just dogs, and they don't get to hear the scripture, because you guys are only going to be delivering to the Jews, not to the Samaritans or the Gentiles.
What's the parable of the Good Samaritan?
Remember when Jesus said that he wasn't going to share the gospel with Samaritans because they are dogs, and it would be like giving table scraps?
What about the woman at the well?
Exactly.
She was a Samaritan.
And then what about
he
Jesus?
Was reaching out to he was telling parables about reaching out to Samaritans. He was reaching out to Samaritans. He was doing the exact opposite of that. Wait, just to go back to TJump's point real quick, we'll come back to this one. What made Christianity so attractive early on was that it wasn't about simply working your way to God. It was about grace, because Jesus Christ came and died for his enemies. So that's
it
God
was about mysticism,
human, dying for his very enemies. That's what reversed this whole cycle. And all of a sudden you have, like Aron was saying earlier, you didn't have this caste system anymore. No longer were the Romans defining social reputation or other gods, perhaps, in terms of you're rung on the ladder. Instead, it was God becoming human flesh, dying, and saying everyone now is on the same plane. So radically different from every other god at that time.
Wait a second. I wanted to respond to Cliffe really quick. Even if I grant what you were saying, that the reaching out to your enemy was what you're assuming originate with Jesus, that's false too, because again, Buddhism says save all suffering beings everywhere, including
not only that, but you love your enemy as yourself was translated from
Buddhism taught that everything is an illusion. Buddhism taught cut off your desires. That's what Siddhartha Gautama Buddha taught. Cut off your desires. And Jesus Christ says, no, don't cut off your desires. Desire the well-being of even your enemy. Be good to your enemy, even if your enemy doesn't deserve it.
But Jesus was himself a renunciate, or claimed to be, just like Buddha.
Jesus never claimed to be a renunciate.
So do you think when Buddha says...
So Jesus spent lavishly on himself? Jesus didn't preach that it was impossible for a rich man to get into heaven?
I can promise you, he taught Zacchaeus that Zacchaeus, because of his faith in him, would be in heaven. And Zacchaeus gave half of his money away to the poor, half, not all of it.
Gave half his money away to the poor, and that was the criteria.
No, that was not the criteria. That was a sign of his faith.
You had to,
The rich
you had to
young
sell
ruler
your
said,
clothes.
sell
you
it
had-
all and give to the poor.
Exactly.
And
So
come
he
and
was a
follow me.
renunciate, just like I said.
Wait, I think that answers your earlier question too. In terms of Luke chapter 16, the rich man and Lazarus, this gets back to hell and the whole carrot and the stick thing. Jesus in no way sends that man to the lake of fire like Revelation talks about. Instead, he simply talked about as rich man. He loses his name, showing that his very identity is in his wealth, and so he wants to live separately from God. That's why Jesus is bending over backwards so many times to talk about the poisonous nature of money. It's a good thing, but it can be poisoned so quickly. That's why he talks about the eye of the needle. That's why he speaks against it in the sense of be careful not to lose yourself in wealth.
Another mistranslation was that it never actually said that it'd be a camel that would go through the eye of a needle, that it was actually a knot of camel hair
That's true.
that would go through the eye of a needle.
We can agree on that.
Yeah. And another of the mistranslations was the idea that Jesus was born of a virgin, because the actual word meant unmarried maiden. And so another several prophecies, Isaiah 7 that was
He needed to freeze after the virgin comment. It was a
Matthew. Whoever wrote Matthew obviously hadn't paid much attention when he wrote Isaiah, because he messed that completely up.
No, he didn't. You know why you're wrong?
I know why I'm right.
The Septuagint translates that Hebrew word as virgin in the Greek. So obviously, Aron, you're wrong.
Well, obviously, I'm right.
7:14.
Obviously, I'm right, because if you
the
read
Septuagint, which was the Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament, translates that word, which you're right. It could be virgin. It also could be young maiden. But the Septuagint translates that as virgin in Greek.
then
So
the
for you to
Septuagint
say,
is
no,
wrong,
it's
and
just-
I'm right, because we have to go back to the story. We have to go back to the story. Excuse me, I'm speaking.
Yeah, I know you're speaking. I'm speaking
Excuse
also.
me. We were reading about
interrupted
from
me first.
Isaiah, right? So Isaiah tells a prophecy.
What we ought
About
to
another-
do is let's give Aron a chance to respond, and then maybe what we'll do is 2-minute intervals. So
Okay.
we'll take a minute or two for Aron.
I would
then-
rather do the open conversation, but I just have to interject this. So Isaiah is talking about a prophecy that he's giving to this other king, in which he says that a maiden is pregnant with a child, and that when that child is old enough to choose honey over curds, then you'll know that your enemies are no threat to you. So we're not talking about Jesus. We're not talking about a magical baby. We're not talking about a baby born of a virgin. We're talking about some kid who lived and died 700 years before Jesus. And then when it turned out the maid wasn't pregnant, Isaiah had to go impregnate her himself. And then he named the kid the wrong thing, screwing up his own prophecy. So we know that whoever wrote Matthew didn't pay attention when they read Isaiah, because that prophecy does not talk about Jesus and did not talk about a virgin, because how could she be a virgin if Isaiah impregnated her? So the Septuagint is wrong and I'm right.
All right, TJump. One of your main points was, unless you can empirically prove something, it's not true. You leaned heavily on empiricism. But TJump, the whole statement, unless you can empirically prove something, it's not true. You can't empirically prove that statement.
Yeah, we can.
That statement is a belief. No, that's a belief.
No, this is going off the null hypothesis.
You
where
cannot
unsupported
empirically
assertions,
prove that God does not exist. I cannot empirically prove that God does exist. Why?
empty assertions
Because
are
the
not
question
considered valid.
of God is not a scientific question.
Empty
There is
assertions
no
are
way
not
to
considered valid.
empirically prove that a miracle has occurred. Why? Because a scientist would have to assume, no matter what, that no natural cause had been discovered yet to cause what you and I can call a miracle.
No. So I didn't say anything about empiricism at all. I never said that in my opening. I said you need a way to differentiate imagination from reality. That's empirical verification is a good way to do that, but it's not necessarily the only way. If you want to provide a different way, that's perfectly fine.
And
But I
as
never
said
said empiricism ever in a thing. And you can definitely verify miracles and magic and supernatural. Those are perfectly easy to verify. For example, if I say, I believe God or the spaghetti monster exists, and if I pray to the spaghetti monster, he'll generate a gold brick in front of me, and it happens repeatedly over and overly and testably, that would be good evidence of the spaghetti monster. The fact that there are other explanations that could explain that doesn't mean anything. What matters is whichever one makes the novel testable predictions that are confirmed first is the best hypothesis. So you can definitely verify the supernatural if you make novel testable predictions. And again, I never said anything about empiricism.
And as
Sir,
I
the
said,
whole
with the null
point of a miracle
hypothesis,
is when a Christian says, I believe in miracles, they're saying, I believe in natural law. And usually a miracle does not occur. It's the reason it's called a miracle is because it does not naturally occur.
One thing,
If you,
but I think just before Tom responds, I want to I'll let you finish, Cliff. Sorry to cut you off.
No problem.
What we'll do as well, as I know that Aron also had a point that he wanted to mention, going back to your earlier point, Cliff. But Cliff, if you want to, we'll give you a chance to finish this, and then at some point, I just want to be sure that Aron doesn't get kind of left behind, because I know that Tom's going to want to rebut as well.
no, go ahead.
okay, so I was saying about the null hypothesis, empty assertions. If it can't be indicated or vindicated, verified or falsified, if it can't be quantified or qualified, then it has no value at all. So we don't even have to disprove it. It simply doesn't warrant serious consideration. You have to show me that there's a there there. Do you understand what I mean? In other words, like Hitchens' razor, what is asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
My whole point in my opening comment was there are different types of evidence. And that's what I'm trying to communicate to you guys.
What kind of evidence would you be talking about now?
As I was saying, there are different types of evidence. There is scientific evidence, which is based on the repeatability of an experiment. There is historical evidence that has nothing to do with repeatability. You do not repeat World War II. You do not repeat the Civil War.
I grant the difference
knowledge
between...
has nothing to do with repeatability, with verifying it in a lab, or having it repeated in an experiment.
I grant the difference between historical evidence and scientific evidence.
There is also experiential evidence. I have a memory of yesterday, what I did yesterday. I cannot...
Sorry, but subjective...
I cannot prove to you that my memory of yesterday is accurate. But I can examine myself, examine my memory, and come to the conclusion that indeed this did happen yesterday.
I think
you can come to that conclusion,
Aron,
but if you can't demonstrate it at all,
we
you can't really know it.
I think the last thing you said, Aron, we didn't get to hear it because I think the internet chopped. And so when it cut back to, I think we missed maybe the last thing you said.
I don't remember what the last thing was. I mean,
no problem.
What were we talking about? So I don't know.
Well, to address your historical evidence thing, as I mentioned in my opening, no one in history, the consensus is that testimony does not work for miracles, magic, mythical creatures. For anything that has no empirical basis, testimony is just garbage. It doesn't matter how much testimony you have. We have thousands of eyewitnesses of Bigfoot, tens of thousands of Loch Ness Monster, hundreds of thousands of different kinds of ghosts and spirituals, millions of homeopathy. There's tens of millions of certain kinds of like Hindu miracles. Like, testimony is not evidence of miracles or magic or mythical creatures or paranormal or the supernatural or UFOs, which is the case not only in history, but also in courtrooms. Courtrooms throw out any cases that these things are brought up in as the cause of anything. Testimony is not accepted as evidence for any of those things because you need to demonstrate they actually exist in the world with something like empirical evidence before the testimony is credible. Like I mentioned, the conceptual evidence of testimony, which is the same whether it's your personal eyewitness testimony or testimony of someone from history, is not evidence of anything existing until it's actually been demonstrated to exist in the first place.
So you're, okay, based off his point though, in terms of your naturalistic philosophy, you're still going to say that God could never have punched a hole through space and time. His son being born here could have gone about not only creating miracles like the feeding of the 5,000. I mean, back to the scriptural, the reliability of the Gospels. How could the feeding of the 5,000, if there were that many people around who were non-believers, how could that ever have gotten off the ground?
That's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that one up, because if you noticed that when you have that exact same story occur twice with the same people in attendance both times, and they're equally amazed both times, it's not like you didn't just see Jesus do this already 2 chapters ago. He's doing it again. So what? I mean, it's the same thing he did before, but they're completely amazed about it because this is the way these stories made by storytellers are appropriated. They're taken from other people and they're put together. And sometimes they're put in twice.
So in the Christian tradition, those are 2 separate happenings.
Yes, the historical consensus. The historical consensus is that it's fake. It didn't happen at all. It's just a made-up story written down by people who didn't. It didn't happen.
But what about oral tradition and oral testimony? Does it have just as much weight today as it did back then?
No.
No.
If somebody tells me that they've, and I've had people tell me this, that they've encountered demons and stuff like that, that their testimony has absolutely no bearing whatsoever. We need something. I mean, if you had something where it was realistically possible, at least, then eyewitness testimony would be the least reliable form of evidence. But in this case, it's not a form of evidence. You need something more. In worlds where magic exists, there are people who can demonstrate that. Obi-Wan, Gandalf, Spock, and Hermione will be able to demonstrate that they can do what they think they can do. And even if science couldn't explain it, we can prove that it happened. We can prove that Spock did the mind meld thing. There's no other way that could have worked. We don't know how he did it, but he did it reliably every time in a lab. He's able to do it. So that's real. But the sad thing is, with Christianity, with faith healing, with any kind of supernatural anything, no kind of variability at all. It's completely indistinguishable from the imaginary because that's what it is.
My experience of reality is that love is the most important thing and experience I have. Love is not empirical. It's not based on empiricism. It's not based on science.
Yes,
it's not based on molecules.
Yes, it is.
Based on a free decision to care for somebody.
No, it isn't.
That love that I experienced is powerful. That love shows me that there is an immaterial reality that cannot be measured in the bottom of a test tube or by a ruler.
Because it isn't real.
And that love is very real. Love shows me that there is more to reality than just neurons and microbes.
No, you're jumping to an assumption.
A free, autonomous being who can choose to freely love. Now, when I experience that, what that shows me is there's more to reality than just the immaterial. There's a transcendent being. Now, science has nothing to say whether there's a transcendent being or not. Science deals with a natural phenomenon, that which is observable, that which is measurable. You can't measure love. You can't measure God, because God is an immaterial being who is the creator, who is transcendent, who is above and outside of the universe. It's similar to when you read a book, although you can begin to learn something about the author, the book should point you to the author and should point you to a rational mind who wrote this excellent book. Similarly, when I experience love, when I experience order and design, although that's not God, pantheism is not the way we go. Instead, it points us to a lover, an intelligent mind, some type of God. And then when you've got Jesus Christ claiming to be God in human form, he dies, is buried, and rises from the dead. The evidence is you can trust him to reveal God accurately.
Except that he never said that. And nothing you just said is true. I mean, well, there's some caveats here. Love does exist, yeah, but it's not a choice. Who we love and what we love is not our choice. It's just something that happens to us. Right? This is just a result of our chemistry, for example, is because of our evolution as a social animal that we have a natural compassion for our family, friends, and fellows. It is measurable. It is chemical. It is entirely material. And I'm sorry that you leapt to completely unfounded conclusions for no damned reason with no justification whatsoever.
My life.
I'm sorry, what?
My life.
What about your life?
My life is proof that love is real. I don't have to love my enemy. In
We're
fact,
not contesting that love is real.
And then I have chosen to forgive my enemy at other times.
You and I agree that love is real. We do not agree that it means that there are magical pixies pushing up the daisies.
And that's not what I said.
So what's the point of love?
There is no point of love. What's
the point of evolution, though? You brought up evolution of love. What's the whole point? Is it just to propagate our genes, or what's the point?
This is why we have a compassion for our family, friends, and fellows. This was the thing that gave us the advantage when we lost our muscularity and we didn't yet have large brains. The only thing that we did have that gave us the edge over the other animals was that we cared so much about each other. When other herd animals, for example, would be running from predators, and the weak or the slow or the babies would be taken by those predators, very rarely do those herd animals come back to save their kin. But we did. We came back to protect the weak. We came back to protect our elderly with the whole tribe throwing stones and using clubs and stuff against one panther. What's he going to do? Right? I mean, he can't face off all of us. So this is what gave us strength. Our humanity is based in our socialization. And this compassion isn't just for other people. It can extend to other species as well. But it is measurable, and it is material, and it does not imply in all any magic imaginary friend.
So here's, okay,
Right.
selfish altruism. That's what I got for a lot of what you just said. And that's tremendously depressing to me. Because
Why?
Christ says,
How
go
could
ahead and
something that is
reach out to
inspiring
not
to
only your
me-
neighbor, but your enemy also, not because it benefits you in any kind of way, because it benefits them.
How
That
could
is a way
something that
better
is so
ethic for our society today than selfish altruism based off of that type of worldview you just stated.
How could something that is so inspirational to me be depressing to you?
Because
it means nothing ultimately. It's very simple. If it is true that you and I were produced by and will eventually be annihilated by mindless, meaningless forces, then all your altruism is a jump into fantasy land.
So what you're telling me is that you have to reject science. We have to reject things that we know to be true.
False. I never said that once.
Well, you're saying that we can't be a product of evolution, right?
I never said that once. I said, if it is true that you were produced by and you will ultimately be annihilated by mindless, meaningless forces,
Which is obviously the fact.
then despair is the only logical conclusion.
No, it's not remotely logical. Your worldview is morose. I've never
yours is,
understand
not
why
mine.
Christians come
I'm
up with this.
convinced that you were not produced by mindless, meaningless forces, and I'm convinced that you don't have to be annihilated. I'm convinced that there's real life now and there's life for eternity. That's
I'm
not
sorry
morose.
that you are convinced of things that are definitely not true. I'm sorry that you're convinced of that. More so,
Aaron, you
more
can keep
so.
on saying that, but that's just as rude as if I keep on saying to you,
I'm
"Oh,
sorry,
just
you're
false, it's
wrong.
false." You
Period.
have to
I'm
give
sorry.
evidence. What's
You're-
the
you're
evidence? You
just
gotta give
wrong.
evidence. You can't just say you're wrong. What's the evidence? Think.
Yes, I have the evidence,
question.
and you don't. I have some understanding of this where you have none. You
No,
just keep
Aaron,
making these assertions of things that don't make any sense.
you're wrong, you have to give a better picture, a better answer that has more evidence. You can't just say it's wrong and act
I
like
did
that
give
settles
evidence.
it.
You didn't. You said you were convinced of these incredible things without any evidence whatsoever, but you're convinced by them. I can give evidence for everything that convinces me. I have the evidence. You're telling
No,
me
you
I
don't.
don't. I do.
No, well, give
What
it
I
to me.
said was worse than you believing things that are not evidently nor even possibly true. And both of those statements are demonstrably correct. It's not evidently true. It's not even possibly true because there's no precedent or parallel or verified phenomenon indicating that any such possibility exists. You've got
Give
nothing.
me the
No
evidence.
possibility, no evidence.
I'd like to do that. I'd like to give you some of the evidence. So, for
Good.
example, I
Go,
can quote Julian Mussolino, who's a cognitive scientist, who says the vast majority of people in his field, cognitive science, neurology, biology, they all conclude that there is no soul and that the brain is purely material. And so you're saying that all of the experts in all the relevant fields are wrong because feelings? That seems to be what you're saying. And it seems like if I can shock your brain and cause you to feel love for anyone I particularly choose, would that prove you wrong? Because it's clearly just a material thing I'm sticking in your head and a material interaction with the brain that causes you to feel love. Doesn't that prove that love is purely physical?
No, because my experience, my life, and I'm convinced your life, you know very well that although you have a physical body and you can have bad moods due to chemical imbalances in your body, you can be depressed, you can be schizophrenic, you can be paranoid because of chemical imbalances in your body, which are very real, they're not made up, that if you're not subject to those chemical imbalances, that you have a free will. You choose to love or to hate. You choose to be apathetic or to love. That's my experience of everyday life. I'm convinced, Aron, that you don't have to be faithful to your wife. I don't have to be faithful to my wife. You can be unfaithful. I can be unfaithful. We don't have to be faithful to our wives. We have a will, a free will.
Well, you asked
But
for
you
the evidence
don't,
there.
because you're a Christian, and that's not possible for a Christian to have free will. Your belief in prophecy denies you that. You can't have a free will. If you could not surprise God, who made up his prophecies like thousands of years ago, supposedly, and so all of these interactions for all these different generations of all these different people down through time, nothing can change this prophecy, then you don't have any free will. You can't surprise God. God already knows what you're going to do before you're going to do it. He already knows what you're going to pray for before you pray for it, so why bother praying?
Well,
You don't have free will. You can't.
It's very simple. prayer is not the way to get the cosmic bellboy to fetch your bags and put a Mercedes in your driveway. Rather, prayer is an experiment in intimacy with God.
No,
it's not the way to twist God's arm and get what you want. That's crass manipulation.
No, that's not what prayer is.
Growing intimacy with God, love with God, or a spiritual relationship with God.
No.
It's not a way to get your bidding done by the.
No, that's not what prayer is. Prayer is talking to your imaginary friend until you believe he's listening to you.
No, it is not.
That's exactly what it is. That's what every prayer to every religion is.
Why
is it to every religion?
That's what you do when you pray.
prays?
It's not what I'm doing when I pray.
What about the Muslims when they pray? What about the Buddhists? The Hindus? Great example. What about when they pray?
Yeah, what about it?
They have a personal relationship with their God who appears before them and talks with them.
No, they
audibly,
do not. That
visibly.
is not respecting the Upanishads. That's not respecting the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, but it's respecting
Hinduism
George Harrison.
teaches that everything is part of God. They don't have a relationship with a separate being, God.
They
Everything
do
is
have a
part of God.
relationship.
If you respect the Upanishads and if you respect the Bhagavad Gita, you know very well they do not claim to have a personal relationship with God.
I know very well
who's God.
I know very well that some Hindus do proclaim to have a personal relationship with God. Specifically,
fine, but that's not out of the Vedas and Upanishads or Bhagavad Gita.
Actually,
that's
it
their
is.
Own, whatever.
I just spoke to a Hare Krishna several times. I've worked with the channel of them, and they do literally just quote the Bhagavad Gita, specifically saying, "Here is where if you say the Hare Krishna mantra, you can have a personal relationship with the God who will specifically speak to you." So they do say that. But I wanted to bring up your other point earlier.
TJump for them?
It's 330 million deities.
No,
who is God for them?
It doesn't matter which one. They have a personal relationship, so it proves you.
No, I was just at a Hindu temple. That's false. I was just
that's
at a
not
Hindu temple
false.
because a Hindu family came to my church thinking that non-denominational meant interfaith. And so they said, please come to our Hindu temple. So I went there. I was there with the pouring of the milk on all the statues and sticking the fruit in the mouths and then having a food fight. I was there for it all. And then they had to play these songs for literally, when it's their new year, they have to play a song the same way for 48 hours. And if they mess up with one single note, they have to start over. Okay, what is that saying right there? It's saying it's all based on rituals. And again, getting back to Aron's earlier point, grace versus works righteousness. And
okay, so you're telling us
that is a gigantic divide. And all of Aron's points and indictments towards the character of the Christian God is always based off of his response to fundamentalist Christians who do base their theology on works righteousness. That's why they have the pride, the tremendous ego and judgmentalism, the self-righteousness. That's why they're saying you have to do X, Y, and Z in order to work to God, in order to get to heaven, because it's all stick.
Okay, so I can just. So
that's who you're fighting against.
I can just quote the Buddhist saints: "To develop love, saints have stressed forming a close personal relationship with Krishna through Brahma." Yes, you can develop a close personal relationship.
Yes, and it depends. When you say you go to a Hindu temple and they do something different.
Of Buddha. Buddha never once talked about God. He was agnostic.
Yes, he did.
Gautama Buddha was agnostic. Read the teachings of Buddha. Buddha did not talk about God once.
Yes, he did.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did, because he said whether the gods exist or not is irrelevant.
Well, okay, fine.
So he did talk about God.
All right, in that sense. He never talked about God being real who we could have a relationship with. He was totally agnostic.
Remember what I said earlier about Jesus having the legends of John the Baptist appropriated onto Jesus, so that John the Baptist now, in a sense, has to baptize Jesus to tell his followers that now you will follow Jesus instead, and how the Muslims then appropriated Jesus too, so that people want to come, pilgrims come to Islam. Jesus has to refer them to Muhammad. You aware of this?
No. Jesus referring them to Muhammad?
Yes. Because Jesus still exists in Islam. He never died.
Heaven.
On earth.
No, Jesus is not on earth according to the Quran.
In Islam.
And according to the Quran, which is what Islam is based on, Jesus is not on earth. He ascended to heaven.
Jesus is still on earth. He was never crucified. He's still alive.
Never crucified. He ascended to heaven, Aron. You're right. He wasn't crucified because God.
And he went about. He lived in a house on earth for many centuries after his death, where he would go out every day and still heal people. So when pilgrims, specifically from Zoroastrian faith, would come seeking the truth of God, they would come to Jesus because they were told that Jesus was great.
He got frozen again, James.
We missed the last I think you were saying Jesus said, and then it cut out on you, Aron.
Yeah, in some of the folklore, people, but I'm getting a note that the internet is unstable, which is a weird thing. But anyway, there are pilgrims that tell these stories that they come to seek the truth of God. They would go to Jesus, who never died in Islam, never was crucified, and continued to live on earth. And he would go out and heal people every day. And so he would meet these pilgrims, and they would say, well, we're seeking the truth of God. And Jesus says, well, I'm not the final prophet. You need to see Muhammad. So Jesus still alive, still on earth in the time of Muhammad.
Oh, during the time of Muhammad? Okay, well, that's not what the Quran teaches, but go ahead and say it. The Quran teaches he ascended to heaven and he's not here. Okay, that's what. Now, of course, we could talk about spin-offs from Islam and spin-offs from Christianity, but when I deal with Muhammad, I got to be true to the Quran. The same way when I deal with Jesus Christ, I got to be true to the Gospels.
So we were talking about Hinduism.
Crucified in the Quran, instead he ascended to heaven.
So we were talking about Hinduism.
Eyewitnesses insist Jesus did get crucified. He was buried, and then he rose from the dead.
So we were talking about Hinduism, and I specifically was talking about members of the Bhakti faith and what they claim. And then you guys went to a Hindu temple, which I'm guessing was not Bhakti. I'm guessing maybe it was Vaishnavites or Brahmin. I don't know. But when you say that you went to a Hindu temple and it was different than what this other group is, well, how do you know that you didn't go to the Hindu version of the Pentecostals versus the Seventh-day Adventists? You know, there are differences.
Yeah,
so Hinduism,
denomination, yeah.
You read the Vedas and Upanishads. You don't let a Hindu tell you what Hinduism is. You go to the source document.
What?
The Vedas,
you don't let the believer. You don't let the believer.
Don't let a Christian tell you who Christ is.
Hold on.
And don't let a Muslim terrorist tell you what Islam is. Go to the Quran and learn about Islam.
Talk to an Amish Christian.
I got to say something. I was raised by a Mormon family, and I thought it was really interesting. I never identified as Mormon, but people would ask me, "What is your religion?" I would say, "Well, my family is Mormon," and then they would start telling me what Mormons believe, as if I wouldn't know, if I were Mormon, what I believe. Right? So I got to see the Christian bigotry about Baptists telling me what Mormons believe. When I would invite them in, hey, you want to come tell my mother that she believes these things? They wouldn't, because they know she doesn't believe those things. You know, if you want to know what a Mormon believes, probably you ought to ask a Mormon. Don't ask a Baptist, because they don't know shit.
Aron, Jesus Christ loves you, not because I
no,
say
he doesn't, because he
Jesus
isn't real.
Christ loves you because he said he loves you.
Jesus
it's not
Christ
because of what I
doesn't
say,
exist.
it's what Jesus said.
Jesus
and when I investigate Muhammad, I'm going to have the intellectual honesty and open-mindedness to read the source document, the Quran. I don't learn about Muhammad from some terrorist who flies a jet into the World Trade Center.
Do you think I
don't learn about Hinduism?
Do you think I learned about Muhammad
from
a terrorist?
Perverts Hinduism. I go to the Vedas and Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita and I learn about Hinduism. It's that simple.
And that's what I did. So you somehow got the weird ass impression that I learned Quran from a terrorist?
No, that was not my point, Aron. Come on.
Well, your point is you're full of shit. That's what your point
All right,
is.
okay.
I'm reading the Quran.
But Jesus still loves you, Aron, okay?
Folklore.
Jesus really loves you, and he gave his life for you, bud. And for you to reject him because of some Mormon or Baptist, come on, man. Be open-minded. Read the Gospels. Find out what Jesus said.
I already read the Gospels. I already saw that Jesus didn't say those things. It's a fictional character.
Maybe one more topic before we go into Q&A. Is there anything that we didn't get to cover that everybody was hoping, or one person was hoping to cover?
Cliffe said that if you present an alternative hypothesis, you're supposed to present one with better evidence. And I think I just did that. So we have neurological, cognitive science, all of the experts in all of the fields show that we can demonstrate love as a physical process in the brain, which can be turned off or turned on by electrodes, purely chemical process, nothing more than that. That seems to be a far better hypothesis supported by better evidence. And the counter evidence he said is, well, his feelings, like his personal experience of love, he thinks is evidence that's non-physical, even though any neurologist could just go in and turn it off anytime they want in the brain. Somehow his personal experience is better evidence than the evidence of all the experts in all the fields doing all of the research, I think.
No, but again, that doesn't prove. It's simply, you find meaning in love. You find meaning in beauty. When Aron listens to Led Zeppelin, he finds great meaning in music. It's not just like, if you keep thinking about, oh, this is just, if you look at electrodes, or you just look at the oxytocin, just look at the dopamine, I mean, that's going to depress you because it's all reductionistic. Trust me, if you are married to a woman, you say, I do. There's a big part of free will in saying, I do. When I do marital counseling with a lot of broken couples, when they come in, there's a decision to make. Am I going to go ahead and continue to respect and honor the commitment and covenant I made, or by my free will and based off of my, perhaps if it's just chemicals anyway, I'm just going to walk out the door and go sleep with somebody else? That's ultimately, it's all about your experience at the end of the day, because you can't test for love. You can't get it in the test tube, TJump. That's why so many neuroscientists, for example, the neuroscientist who wrote When Breath Becomes Air, that bestseller from 2 years ago, on his deathbed, he said, neuroscientifically, you cannot prove love, sacrifice, human rights, so many things that jive with the human experience and how the world works today. That's why I'm becoming a Christian.
Oh my
His
God,
personal
you just told me
feelings
that
don't
there's
really-
some guy made a
Intangibles.
deathbed confession.
Intangibles. No, it wasn't deathbed.
Well, that's why he's becoming Christian on his deathbed.
He was definitely not directly on his
Do
deathbed.
you expect me to
He had
believe?
cancer.
Do you expect me to
cancer.
believe that horse shit?
I don't care.
Go
if he
read the
did
book
say that.
yourself.
Wait, I don't care if he did say that.
He wrote a book after he died?
You answer. It was for you.
Anybody can write a book and write anything they want in a book. It's not published in a journal. All of the published academic peer-reviewed journals show, love is purely a chemical process. There's no evidence of the soul. Everyone in the field accepts that as the consensus field in every academic field. Like, there is no evidence of the soul.
TJump, the answer is very simple. It's the following. The declaration that you are making that science is the only arbiter of truth is not a scientific finding.
Okay, but I never said that.
Is a belief. Yes, your whole argument is neuroscience shows
it's not even a belief.
that all of love is simply a chemical. So what you're holding on to,
all of love is
the
chemical. The rest of
declaration
what you said is wrong.
that science is the only arbiter of truth.
Again, I never said that.
That is not a scientific finding.
We didn't say
the
that.
whole argument, TJump, right from the first time I met you was, unless it's scientifically shown, then it's not true.
No, Cliff, that's not ever what I said.
Explain yourself.
Cliff, what I said is science is evidence. Science is great evidence. It works. I never said it's the only evidence. You could find other evidence that's perfectly fine. If you have another method that's better than science, fantastic. Please show me. I would love to see it. Right now, I don't know of any.
You don't go on a scientific date, TJump.
Yeah, I do.
You don't love someone based on science. You don't love someone based on hormones.
Yes,
now, that's involved in it.
Yeah, you do.
It's involved. But you make judgments of your instincts, don't you? You have a bunch of different, at least for speaking for myself, I got a bunch of different instincts.
Can I help what I find attractive?
Forgive, to seek revenge, to cut a person off at the knees.
Seek revenge?
Yes, I have that instinct.
Are you still so primitive that you're seeking revenge?
I have that instinct. I definitely do. I have the instinct to seek revenge.
That's very sad.
All right, well, good. I'm glad that you never struggle with hatred and revenge, Aron. I think that's most
being
commendable.
so religiously self-righteous, Aron.
Well, I mean, Cliff, it seems like what you're saying is you have feelings and you think that your feelings are better than the scientific evidence. Like, that is clearly false.
My life.
No, my experience of love, my experience of self-reflection.
Which does not support your argument at all.
Of saying no to certain instincts and saying yes to other instincts shows that there is a me that is above the chemicals and above the instincts and is making a choice between which instincts to follow.
So
it doesn't show that.
It's your experience. You think that your personal experience is better than the scientific evidence from all of the different fields.
No, I'm saying I don't agree with the belief that science is the only arbiter of truth.
I never said that.
It's not a belief.
I'm saying you have experience, TJump, not just me.
Yes.
I think if you look at your experience honestly, you'll have to admit I have different instincts that pull me in different directions. Sure. I have to choose which instinct to follow.
I have to say that I've always only ever looked at my experience and the things that I believe honestly, and I doubt if you ever have. So I don't like the way that you're alleging that if you look at it honestly, I am always there.
Wait.
When are you going to join me in that?
Can I guess, though? Can I guess? I think you were turned off to faith early on based off of religious hypocrisy in the church, and that TJump was turned off early on based off of unanswered prayer. Am I right?
I was actually turned off to faith because it's inherently dishonest.
So unbiased rationale. Unbiased rationale. You're going to look me honestly in the face and tell me you were turned off based off of unreasonable intellectual evidence.
I was turned off of faith for the exact reason I just gave you.
You wouldn't get so angry. You wouldn't get so angry if that was the truth.
I get angry because I hate lies. And that's what you're doing right now. So I got turned off to faith because it is the most dishonest and inherently deceptive position it is possible to have.
You
It's
have
no way to
beliefs.
find the truth about anything, but it's a great way to stay wrong forever and never know it.
You have beliefs and faith presuppositions
have
when it comes
faith.
to why in the world do you live
I
for
don't
human
have
rights?
faith.
Why do you sacrifice? These are all
I
beliefs.
don't.
You
I
cannot
have
prove them.
beliefs, and they're
You can't
based on
prove them.
evidence. They're not based on faith. I don't have faith.
So, okay, roll that one back. That didn't make any sense.
Yeah, I don't have any faith or any presuppositions in my worldview
Yeah.
at all.
Faith is a belief that is not based on
Really?
evidence. I don't believe anything without
Empirically
evidence.
empirically prove to me that your reason puts you in touch with reality.
Uh,
Empirically prove to me that your reason puts you in touch with reality.
you don't
All right,
need
give
to
me any
empirically-
specific and I will.
Wait, you don't need to empirically prove something for it not to be a presupposition. That's not how presuppositions work.
Prove to me empirically that your presuppositions,
you
whatever
I
they
don't have
are,
a
are true.
You
presupposition.
don't need empirical stuff to prove something for it to not be a presupposition. A presupposition
I-
is something you assume to be true before the argument
Okay,
starts.
prove to me why you live for human rights. How do you explain human rights? Why do we as Americans fight so hard for human rights?
I believe I just said that.
No,
I
no,
just
T-Jump.
explained that.
This
when
was for T-Jump.
Okay.
Evolutionary advantage. It's good for the society. I believe in objective morality, so I think there is a moral law in the universe without a God. So I would go that route.
Okay, so what does that, I mean, how does that explain us going to the other side of the planet, though, and helping people?
Because there's a moral law that causes us to feel certain kind of moral convictions and act in a certain way, just like gravity causes us to move in a certain way.
So do you believe, based off of your worldview, that you have just as high of a motivation as the Christian rationale for helping somebody across the entire planet?
Well, I would say it's
more-
higher.
Yeah, I have a higher one
Why?
because
Okay, what? Please.
Sure.
Michael Shermer was just having a really tough time with Christian Smith on this debate. I mean,
Sure.
really tough time.
I
So
wouldn't
please
doubt
explain to me.
that, but we're not going to bring up Michael Shermer.
But yeah, it's pretty simple. I think that human beings have one life. They have about 100 years to live, and that's it. And so giving them as much value and experience in that very brief time they have is extremely valuable. And any minute that they have suffering is a tremendous loss and tremendous evil in the world. And so because we don't have infinite time to live, every moment we have is infinitely more valuable than the Christian worldview. Whereas in the Christian worldview, our life in this world is pretty meaningless. It's from dust to dust, and we should just not value anything in this world. So from the secular humanist perspective, our life in this world is infinitely more valuable than the Christian worldview.
So your atheist prophets, Camus and
We don't have
Tolstoy
prophets.
and
Please
Nietzsche
don't project
would
your own faults onto
would all
us.
disagree with that. All of them
please,
would disagree with
Cliff,
that.
Please
There's
do
no-
not project your own
Stuart,
faults onto
Stuart.
us. We don't have prophets. We
All of
don't
them.
have faith. We're
Wrong
not
with
just as
the
bad as
absurdity
you
of
are.
life,
That's not our
Camus.
point, Aron.
Absurdity of life, Camus.
Stuart, if I just said
Tolstoy said all of his meaning in life was stripped once he realized that this life was going to end. There was no meaning because there was no eternal life.
Stuart,
That's
Stuart,
what
if
I said
So
earlier.
that they are completely different from your thinking. Why is that? Like, if I'm going to become an atheist tonight, if I'm going to convert tonight, why not follow them? Why follow you guys?
Gotcha.
Stuart,
All right,
why would you-
One
why
sec.
would
I
you
do want to
follow-
hold on. I'll let you go, Tom. I just want to say that let's give Tom and Aron a chance to answer, and then I think it's a pretty good time to go into the Q&A.
Yeah, so Stuart, listing all of those other atheists and their other perspective is like if I list Jonathan Smith and say, well, why aren't you a Mormon? Because clearly he's a
Yes.
representation of Christianity. Like just picking a random guy who wrote a book and labeled it atheism doesn't mean it's an authority on atheism.
No, it'd be like John the Baptist and Jesus.
You have to go into
That's how big they are.
Q&A.
No, they're not big at all
So-
in atheism. Like there is no authority in atheism. They're
We'll
just
give-
random guys who wrote books and that's it. Like Jonathan Smith.
Let's give
Yeah,
Aron a chance.
I am frequently accused of being one of these atheist authorities. I assure you, I am not.
Gotcha. And we will jump into it with that. Thanks so much, folks. Whew. That was a lively one, but a terrific one. That was really, really fun conversation.
I'm still bothered by one thing. I just got to say one more thing. When you guys think that you have to live forever in order for life to have meaning,
No.
that's morose. It's morbid.
Well, no. I mean, so you would disagree with all the existentialists then, because they would say that.
I don't care.
So I'm with the
Humans value
existentialists.
most that which
Because
is
you
rare.
can still have a type of meaning here. I mean, certainly I can help my plant grow over there by watering it, and that gives me meaning in life.
Well, let's
and I think
give a
that'll help
comparison.
my life expectancy in some kind of way.
Let's give a comparison, okay? So my primary motivation is truth. I don't want to believe anything that isn't evidently true, and everything you believe is not evidently true. It's supportable, it's not defensible, it's not possible. And those are all defensible statements.
And I believe your position is all emotionally based. It's not mainly based off reason.
It's not remotely emotional. No.
Because you're emotion. There's so much emotion behind it. Like why?
Yeah, I hate
would you be
lies.
this angry at the tooth fairy? Would you be this angry at the tooth fairy?
If the tooth fairy was being taught in grade school, Yeah, I'd be that angry about it.
Sure, the tooth fairy is being taught when you're 2 years old. I mean, when you come
The
out of the
tooth fairy
womb,
is
the
not
tooth fairy is
taught. You don't go to state-funded institutions to be told
So
about
now we're
the
getting
tooth
back
fairy.
to the religion question. Okay, I'm talking about Jesus Christ. But go ahead.
Okay,
Very
so
different.
Whichever version of the tooth fairy or the Easter bunny or whatever you want to go with doesn't matter. We're still talking about things that are not evidently true and not even possible, and that should not be taught in school. And you're trying to sidetrack me from the point I was trying to make. Humans value most that which is rare. This is typical for us. And what is more rare than the value of a human life, right? Except when you think you're going to live forever. And then Christians tell me that this life, the one life we know we actually do get, they think that this is some arduous thing that you've got to get through to get to the great reward that comes after, the one thing you actually do get. That's what's morose, and that's what's so wrong about it. That's the sad thing. Why do I not like faith? It's because it's wrong. It's because everything you guys say is wrong.
Jesus Christ
I don't believe that.
Jesus Christ taught not to live for the afterlife. Jesus Christ taught to live for the now, to redeem and buy back this place by helping the poor.
And he said that he came. He
has nothing to do with this pie in sky by and by. Let's just live for the afterlife.
Right. And in Matthew 10,
totally
he said he came to divide husbands from their wives and parents from their children.
Called
he
hyperbole.
Came to separate families and so forth.
Yes,
I
he
get
did.
all that. So
well, what was his point in saying that?
mysticism.
Wait. What was his point in saying that?
He wants you to believe in mysticism. He wants you to
you're just totally skating over it right now.
I'm not skating over. I'm answering the question.
Yes, you are.
Your number 31. You should have stuck with numbers 31 because you had a better point on that the other night. Based off of,
you don't want to hear the answer, you just want to keep asking the question in the middle of the answer.
Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why.
Let me tell you why you won't let me answer the question you keep asking.
Okay, well, let's give Aron.
Yeah, it's definitely time to go to Q&A because this guy ain't going to get anywhere.
It's about loyalty. It's about loyalty and commitment. It's not about actually.
No, it isn't. It's not.
Your wife.
Why
it has
do you
nothing to do with that?
Why are you absolutely wrong about absolutely everything? Wouldn't it be nice to be right about something once in a while?
Everybody interprets.
We must go into the Q&A.
Right.
So I want to say thanks so much for your questions, folks. Very juicy one tonight. And we're starting with Jason Burris. Appreciate your question. Said, I'm an archaeologist. Tell me, 1, what are the methods that prove the Bible? I find it hard to believe that a faith can be proven through archaeology. And 2, what events in the Bible are proven through archaeology?
Read the book of Acts.
All right.
Archaeology. Why did you answer the question?
All right. Archaeology is not the basis of faith. Instead, archaeology is one of the 4 tests that I use on any document that claims to be historical. Meaning by that, if a document that claims to be historical is talking about the island of Atlantis that archaeology cannot verify, the evidence is that the document is not historically reliable. But if the document is talking about Bethlehem, Nazareth, Jerusalem, Sea of Galilee, all archaeologically verifiable places, then that is one piece of evidence pointing to the reliability of the document. So archaeology has nothing to do with establishing faith in God or faith in Christ. It has to do with determining the trustworthiness of an historical document.
All right, 2 things on that. One, when archaeologists discovered the city of Troy, did that make it evidence of the Hellenist gods?
I gotta give these guys the last word.
Aron,
you
missed my whole point, Aron.
You're affirming his point.
You missed my whole point, Aron.
Okay,
That's
so
sad.
Baptist beer.
We'll go to the next question then. Thanks for your question, or I should say thanks for your super sticker. Woody, appreciate the support. And Majestic P. Beck, thank you as well for that beautiful, tremendous super sticker. Language and Programming, thanks for your question, said, how could a book which admits to people claiming it was a, quote, cleverly devised myth in 2 Peter 1:16 be considered without suspicion as true?
It's total
very
misreading.
simple. Peter writes in 2 Peter, we did not follow cleverly invented stories. Instead, we were eyewitnesses of his power and glory. Just go back and read it for yourself. If you want to find out about Islam, read the Quran. If you want to find out about Hinduism, read the Vedas, Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita. And if you want to find out about Jesus Christ, read the Gospels, read the New Testament.
I will agree on one point. They were not cleverly written.
Next up, thanks for your question. This one comes in from our dearest friend, Language and Programming Strikes Again, saying, which gospel is true? The Gospel of Mark ends at 16:9, where nobody told anybody about the resurrection, or Matthew and Luke. Those say the opposite.
Mark has an empty tomb. You're right. The end of Mark chapter 16 is not in the earliest Greek manuscripts. That is why it's important to read in context. And when you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you have an empty tomb. You also have resurrection appearances, different resurrection appearances in Matthew, Luke, and John. But you unequivocally have an empty tomb and resurrection appearances from the Gospels.
Thanks. And Language and Programming, thanks for your other question, said, the life of Apollonius records the death and resurrection of Apollonius of Tyana. Many eyewitnesses saw this event. Is it true/reliable? Why or why not?
Because Apollonius was written about 200 to 300 years after his death by a guy named Philostratus, and there is absolutely no historical evidence that this really took place. Instead, this guy Philostratus writes about Apollinarius, and there's very, very little evidence that he's historically reliable. So once again, as I began my talk, you've got to determine what tests you use to determine historical reliability. And to try and take Philostratus to try and validate a guy who lived 200 to 300 years before him with no other eyewitness testimony, you're hanging by a very thin thread.
That brings up a point I wanted to ask, and I don't know when I can fit it in. So I'm wondering if after we do the Q&A, I would love to ask the believers a couple of questions.
We can, let's see, we'll keep firing through, and then we can definitely get to those at maybe like a breakup in these questions, because we've got a lot. MILF's Porch, thank you for your question, said, where is the sacrifices when you know you are going to go to heaven and then resurrect 3 days after? Hell would be the securities. Let's see. I think they're saying, like, how is Jesus really sacrificing if he knows, like, that he's going to come back and that he would be in heaven?
You're right. Hard question. It begins with, who is Jesus? Is he really the eternal pre-existent God who is transcendent above the universe, who humbles himself, becomes a human being, lives this sinless life, suffers, and then bleeds and dies on a cross so that you and I could be forgiven and have eternal life? If you're going to call that a non-sacrifice, I'm afraid that's a very sad position. Obviously, he sacrificed incredibly. Now, did he sacrifice as much as you would like him to die and go to hell and stay in hell? No, he didn't do that. He's God, but he's God in human form who suffers, bleeds, and dies on a cross in order to forgive us and give us eternal life. Tremendous sacrifice.
It shows that he took
I got to throw something else in there too. Jesus never said he was God.
Yes, he did.
Oh boy.
No, he didn't.
Absolutely.
He said that Jesus always only ever said that God was someone else, somewhere else, who knew things that Jesus.
are one before.
Yeah,
Abraham
and then he
was,
said in the same chapter,
I have come
in
that
the
they
same
may have eternal life.
Yeah, in
Your
the
sins
same
are
chapter,
forgiven. There's like 10
Okay.
different ways he said it.
There's like no
30 times.
ways he said that. He never said that he was God. He always only ever said that God was someone else, somewhere else, who knew things that Jesus
You just
didn't
wanted
know
to hear
and
him
could
say
do
the
things
word
that Jesus
worship.
didn't do. And when he said that he and the Father
The
were
Muslims
one,
make the same. I'm trying to think you're a Muslim.
meaning that they were the same mission, that they had the same purpose. He then, in the same chapter, then goes and talks to somebody who's not himself to ask, hey, can my disciples
Now
be
you're
one
getting-
with you?
now
the
you're
same
getting into
way
the
that-
Trinity.
Excuse me, let me fucking finish. Can my disciples be one with you the same way I'm one with you? Which means that he wasn't one with him. Jesus
If
did
I
not
read
ever
the
say that he was
Quran,
God.
All right,
the way
I'm
you
going to
read
give
the New
Cliffe and
Testament, that would be
Stuart,
so
hold on one
intellectually
sec. Hold on one
dishonest
sec.
and scary.
Do not
Justin,
accuse
hold on
me
one
of
second.
dishonesty
Okay.
again,
What I need to
especially
do
not while
is, I
lying.
hate to do this. So what we'll do is I'll kick it back to Cliffe and Stuart to have the last word because the super chat was directed at them, and so I don't want to kind of gang up on them. So we'll give them the last word, then we go to the next one.
Well, I mean, that sacrifice was tremendously important, obviously.
Why? 3 days
because
at a weekend resort that he owns?
Judeo-Christian values are all based on that very
So
sacrifice.
Jesus goes to hell for 3 days and he runs hell. So he basically went to one of his own Trump properties.
Again,
and
that's
so he
based
spent
off
the
of
weekend there.
interpretation.
That's it.
We have a lot of questions, and so I do have
Yeah.
to give Cliff and Stuart the last word, and we got to go to the next one. You guys
Yep,
feel good?
that's it.
Okay. Next up, David P. Neff, thanks for your super chat. Said, go Aron. You got a fan out there, Aron. And then Kyle Brosler, thanks for your question, said, let's see, I'd pay a bunch for another Aron versus Kent Hovind debate. I don't know if that's...
I would really love that too, because I had too much fun with it, but I don't want to give that fraud any more attention. There are a handful of people in the NIFB who make videos about me just hoping that I will comment about them, especially that ginger twink who recently uploaded a video claiming that I lied and I admitted that I don't care what the truth is. No, that guy lies every time he breathes, and he's just trying to get attention. I'm not going to give any more attention to people from the NIFB.
I'll work on convincing Aron, everybody. Okay? So, I don't know if it's going to happen. David P. Neff, thanks for your question, said, any good God would care more about our actions than beliefs. Question to Cliff, are people who never heard of Jesus burning in hell?
I do not know how God is going to judge those who've never heard about Christ, because Christ never answered the question. But he does make 5 points that apply to your excellent question. First point, nobody's going to hell because they didn't hear about Christ. The only reason people go to hell is because they choose to live their lives separate from God, and on the day of judgment, God grants their request, and they'll spend eternity separate from him. Second point, there are going to be a lot of people in heaven who never heard the word Jesus Christ. Hebrews chapter 11 in the New Testament lists some of these people by name: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Rahab, a Gentile prostitute. Obviously, they never heard about Jesus, but in humility, they put their faith in God. They're going to be in heaven. Next point, the only reason they're going to be in heaven is because of Christ's death on a cross as a sacrifice for their wrongdoing. Abraham was a sinner. Sarah knew that for sure. So did Hagar and Ishmael. We're all sinners. I'm a sinner. And Christ died on a cross to pay the penalty for our sin, to forgive us and give us eternal life.
Next up, thanks so much for your question. Experiments in prebiotic chemistry said, let's see, is it more moral to allow evil and suffering or to intervene to stop it if the police don't care about the free will of a potential murderer? Then why should an omnipotent God care?
Who's that for, James?
I think that's for you guys.
Well, I mean, it gets after the whole, he gives us free will, grants us free will. Yes, he is omniscient, omnipotent, all-loving, but this place is messed up based off Genesis 3. There's tremendous brokenness, and I think all about, again, this whole conversation tonight is really about experience. I think everything in our experience shows that there is brokenness, the psychological, sociological, cosmic level. And so that's why, sure, God steps in at some points, other times he does not. If he stepped in at every single point, that would take away our free will.
Yeah, God never steps in, period, ever, at all. And we don't have free will.
Next up, Andrew Handelsman, thanks for your question, said, Aron and Cliffe boxing match after the show. Maybe. I don't know. Brother John, thanks for your question, said, how does Yahweh love his enemies? He kills them, the Amalekites, the flood, hell, and they said, embrace pantheism. We have a pantheist.
So this is an easy one. Most likely that is a white suburban guy bringing up that very issue, if I had to guess. And it's so easy for us white suburban men to say that because we are in a culture that is very different from the A&E culture, ancient Near East culture. Don't forget, the Amalekites, the Canaanites, all these kites were most likely always just raping their women, pillaging. They were also doing child sacrifices all the time. I mean, if you walked into an ISIS camp and you saw all the things that were going on in the ISIS camp, I mean, after Caitlin Mueller and all these other things that we've heard about, would you not want some type of judgment at some point? I mean, God gives the Amalekites 400 years to repent. At some point, I would want judgment on a whole camp of people. But don't forget, there's never genocide because these different groups of people always end up popping back up again. So it's not wiping out a whole human race.
And the proof of that is how angry you get if someone steals something from you. The proof of that is how incredibly effective your locks are and your cybersecurity. You know very well that if someone rips you off, you cry out justice. This was wrong, and I do not want this to happen again.
Gotcha. Thanks for your question. Mark Reed said, Cliffe, if experience is good evidence, then why wouldn't all religions be true, even if they all contradict one another?
Because you and I have to be skeptical and very self-analytical and self-critical when it comes to experience. My experience is that I'm not very smart, to be honest with you. In fact, I'm probably the dumbest guy on the screen that you see right now. But when it comes to rationalizing what I want to do, when it comes to justifying whatever I want to do, I turn downright brilliant. And so experience is important to look at. And to tell you the truth, I'm embarrassed about what I have done at times. I'm also very grateful for what I've done at other times. I'm this weird mixture of good and evil. And that's exactly what Jesus Christ points out. We're all valuable because we're all created in the image of God. We all have tremendous capacity to do good. And we also have this warped fascination with evil. Alexander Solzhenitsyn put it this way. There's a line running through every human heart that separates good from evil.
Thank you.
And you cannot follow me unless you hate your brother and your mother and your husband and your father.
I hate to interrupt, so on. But the Pi373, a critic this time, says, Aron, if you don't want to put out false teachings, don't speak as an authority on the Bible.
Good thing I don't ever speak as an authority on the Bible. I don't, ever.
Thank you. And then Zakus, thanks for your question, said, historical evidence can be repeatable, though. It can be corroborated through different sources. If they match, then it's more likely to be true. If they don't, it's more likely to be false. I think
that's not really a question, but it's a good point to bring up that we only have one book that talks about the undead saints and the hours of darkness and all that. Like the other ones don't corroborate that because it never happened.
Gotcha. Stupid whore energy is in the building. She says, surely Philo, a contemporary of Jesus and his apostles, would have heard about all those miracles happening and would have wrote about it. Why didn't he, Cliffe and Stuart?
He was part of the conspiracy.
Okay. I don't know why Philo didn't write about Jesus, but I do know that Josephus, the aristocrat and the Jewish historian, wrote about Jesus. I do know that two Romans historians named Tacitus and Suetonius wrote about Jesus.
Again, don't qualify.
I also know that a Syrian philosopher named Mara bar Serapion, a Syrian philosopher, he was a Stoic, wrote about Jesus. I do know that there are hostile references to Jesus in the Babylonian Talmud, which includes the Mishnah and the Gemara. So Jesus' enemies wrote about him in the Babylonian Talmud. So you've got a Jewish historian and aristocrat. You have two Roman historians, Tacitus and Suetonius. You have a Syrian philosopher, Serapion, and you have the Babylonian Talmud writing about Jesus.
Next up, Ryan Gordon.
We wrote, those people wrote about Christians,
we have so many questions.
Not about Christ.
Cliffe, could you spell that for the Assyrian philosopher? Could you spell that for me?
Serapion.
Next, Ryan Gordon, thanks for your question, said, you can't measure supernatural with natural measurements. You would need a supernatural, quote-unquote, ruler or spirit. Can't measure 3D with only length and height. I think that's for you, Tom, if I had to guess.
Yeah, it's called indirect observation. We don't directly see neutrinos because they're too small to detect, but we can detect the effect they have. So if there is a supernatural being who had some effect in the world, like doing miracles, we could measure it that way, no problem. So if there's a God who you can pray to generate a gold brick and the gold brick appears every time you pray, that would be good evidence of the supernatural. You don't actually need direct observation of the supernatural. You can have indirect observation, which is commonly used in science to detect things that we can't directly see. Not a problem.
Thanks so much.
Yeah,
next.
And I'm glad that you're getting the references that they brought up, because I mean, like Bart Ehrman, who's a scholar on this and an actual authority in the Bible, in a manner of speaking, says that there's no word at all from Jesus's enemies. Now, there's people who write about Christians and the establishment of Christianity by a certain time, like Tacitus and so forth, but none of them ever talked about Jesus himself to verify that there was a man there. So that never happened. And this is according to Ehrman.
Gotcha.
So I would like to
there were
see
15 sources externally within the first 100 years.
I would like to see your refutation about that and read it for myself, because none of the experts seem to be aware of it.
No, that was Bart.
Next
Sorry,
up,
what?
That was Bart, I just said.
Bart Ehrman.
I didn't hear what you said.
15 external sources, he says, all within the 100 years, up to 100 AD.
He said there
I think Aron is froze.
Yep.
said in the next century, but not in that century.
We didn't hear what you said, Aron. Sorry, it froze at just that moment.
I'm sorry. What Ehrman was saying was that, yeah, we've got plenty of people who talk about the existence of Christianity a century later, but we don't have anybody that's talking about the Christ himself in the century that he lived.
Gotcha. Next, we must move on. Andrew Handelsman, thanks for your question. Said movie theory stole Bruce Wayne's avatar. Gotcha. Movie theory is a local troll we have. But Wilma Dickfit, I appreciate your, oh gosh, okay, said, thanks, said, love the channel. James, we appreciate your encouragement about the channel. We appreciate you hanging out here. Zacuse, thanks for your question. Said, Cliffe, a psychopath can't choose to love. They lack empathy, which prevents them from feeling what you're preaching. They can only feel for themselves.
And that is why we call them a psychopath. And that is why we have mental hospitals, because we understand that due to chemical imbalances in the brain, a person can lose a lot of their rational thinking, a lot of their free will, and they become slaves to chemicals. And that is tragic. And we view it as a sickness. We do not view it as healthy. We also do not view it as the norm. And we try to hold them responsible in a different way than we hold someone who has chemical balanced brains responsible.
You can lose your free will?
Simple. Aron, right? Wasn't that for Aron?
I think it's
Yeah.
saying the fact that you can't understand how your experience could just be a product of brain states doesn't mean that you actually have this love thing that you're talking about.
Yeah, well, my point is simple. My point is there is no way to empirically prove that a miracle has occurred. Why? A scientist would have to assume, or a person with that belief that science is what determines reality, a scientist would have to assume, no matter what, that no natural cause had been discovered yet. And so that's TJ's point. I would assume that you would say, although we do not understand exactly why this happens, there is a natural explanation. We just don't have it yet. Because your worldview, at least what I've heard you espouse, TJump, is that only the natural is real, only what is measurable is real, only what is scientifically verifiable is real. And I'm obviously contradicting that and saying I disagree. I think that your experience of life shows you that there is more to reality than simply what you can scientifically verify.
One sec. Folks, if you want to let me know in the chat, so sorry. I accidentally left myself on mute in OBS. Let me know what the last question was that you heard from me being asked. It sounds like you guys could hear everybody else, so you maybe were able to piece together what the questions were, but sorry about that, folks. And appreciate your question. This one comes in from Martin C., who says, Christianity or Christians, do you have contemporary evidence of an afterlife?
Near-death experiences. I think we're getting more and more peer-reviewed articles out of Duke University showing a lot of evidence for them. And so a lot more scholars are taking them seriously. I never would have said NDEs like 5 years ago, ever.
I won't say
I don't
them
know how
5
I
years from
responded
now.
5 years ago. But, and then also the miraculous. I mean, when I was in Haiti, again, this gets back to personal experience. I think every single person I talked to had some kind of encounter with the supernatural.
Next,
So, yeah, go ahead.
So have I.
And-
I've had plenty of encounters with the supernatural. And then I got better, and I realized that those things never actually happened.
give you the last word, Cliff and Stuart.
Yeah, I mean, okay, this gets back. Okay, well, I don't know if that was shrooms or what, because that there's a whole, another piece of literature talking about how a lot of the Christians actually had serious hallucinogenic type issues, and yet they were still right on things. And that's more literature coming out. So, no, from a naturalistic perspective, Aron's exactly right.
Next, Zakus, so sorry.
Hold on a second
if you're
before we get to that, because when we did the first debate, we inspired the second debate, and now he's inspiring me to do another one. So we're talking about scientific evidence for the supernatural. Ooh, I think that's a valid debate. It probably should be a scientific debate. It probably should be in writing.
That sounds juicy.
All
and
these empty assertions that I know he can't really.
Depends on
we
the beer
must go to
type
the next
being
one.
offered.
We in experiments in prebiotic chemistry. So sorry if you didn't hear me read the super chat saying hi, Aron. Nice to talk to you, as well as Zakus. Thank you for your question. Who, if you couldn't piece it together, your question was, Cliff, a psychopath can't choose to love. This is something that Cliff had already answered. So sorry about that, guys. I'm a rookie over here. Then Sphincter of Doom. I think you had heard that one. Folks, let me know if you didn't. That was the one on the inscrutability of experiences does not insulate conclusions drawn from that experience from scrutiny. And hopefully we're all caught up, because now we have Patriot University PhD who has a question saying, Aron Ra, have you finished watching Mr. Hoven's DVD series, and which one was your favorite of them?
I have not watched any series that the convicted fraud, Mr. not Dr. Hovind, has ever made.
Don't worry, I'll buy you a set, Aron. And then Dean Meadows.
No, I won't watch it. I would rather that his fans provide something that was supportive of his position and actually true. Because
all right.
Kent Hovind is a professional liar. That is all he does.
Gotcha. We must move to the next one. Dean Meadows, thanks for your question. Said, Aron, why is it that after being corrected by Inspiring Philosophy and Eric Hernandez on the definition of faith, do you still
You mean when I proved that I was correct both times?
They said, why do you still use the incorrect definition?
Am I still correct after having proved to be correct?
Next up, Dean Meadows. Thanks. All right, we've read that one. Cupcake for All, thank you for your question. Said, Cliff and Stuart, why are you so angry?
I hate lies.
They said Cliff
I
and
had
Stuart.
Lion's Mane coffee tonight and a little deer antler velvet spray. If you've ever had either of those, you'd be angry too.
Next up, Bruce Wayne, thanks for your super sticker support, as well as Cystic to Strong. Appreciate your support. What we have to do, if we do have a third debate, folks, with these two tag teams, I insist we do it in person. We can put your super chats to work, folks, as we could try to find a way to get all of our parties here in the same place. And so that's something I think would be especially fun.
If we're going to be debating the scientific evidence of NDEs or whatever nonsense it was that they wanted to support, we have to have prior reference to whatever scientific peer-reviewed documents they're going to present, because we have to read them in advance and be able to understand and analyze them.
Gotcha.
So that's the big issue with debating creationism, on a stage, because people, as many times as happened to me, they will bring up, scientists have found, blood of dinosaurs in fossils. No, you go back and look at what the actual study is when you get a chance to read it. No, it doesn't say anything that you just said it did. Here's what it actually said. That's what over and over again happens with me. So we have to be able to read those things, those citations, before the debate.
Gotcha. And want to remind you folks, a couple of things. One, that our guest links are in the description. We have more questions, so don't go anywhere, but they are linked in the description, so do want to let you know that if you'd like to hear more of any of our guests. Also want to let you know if it's your first time here, consider hitting that subscribe button, as we have many more debates coming up. As you'll see on the bottom right of your screen, Bart Ehrman will be here with Jonathan Sheffield. That is coming up just over 2 weeks from now. So that should be a juicy one. If you want a reminder, you know where that subscribe button is. And Gabriel K., thanks for your question. Let's see, said, for Cliffe and Stuart, if Jesus doesn't love you after all I do for making me laugh, I'm confused by that. But I think he's trolling. And Cystic to Strong, thanks for your questions. That for both, does annihilation theory make more sense given the canon of Scripture? What convicts you that they originally taught a literal hell? Thanks.
Yes, annihilationism is a position that many followers of Christ have embraced over the past 2,000 years based on different passages in Scripture, including Matthew, where Jesus says, do not be afraid of the one who can kill the body but not the soul. Rather be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. And the point is destruction. So that is why annihilation has been embraced by many followers of Christ over the past 2,000 years.
Who can destroy the soul, and how do I get to meet this person?
Oh, you're going to meet him one day, Aron. It's called the return of Christ and the day of judgment. But he loves you, Aron, and I'm praying that.
But I want my soul destroyed because your heaven would be a horrible damnation, and I want to be spared from it.
No, I can promise
how do I
you
get out of
heaven
that?
is going to be the best that you can imagine, and it's going
No,
to be even
I
better
can
than you
imagine better than you can even think of, and
Oh,
I
I'm
want to
sure you
get
can.
out of the damnation that you
You're
praise.
far more intelligent than I am, Aron. That's not the point. The point is that Jesus insisted that heaven is far more wonderful than the human mind, any mind, can comprehend.
But if you think about it for 10 minutes or more, you'll realize that it is eternal damnation in one form or another. And I would rather be spared that. I don't want to live with little Anthony Fremont for all of eternity. So just destroy my fucking soul and let me out of the deal.
Well, I pray that you'll trust in Christ and receive eternal life.
Well, I
Next
can't
up, we
trust
must-
in
we must
your
move
magic
on.
imaginary friend who isn't real.
Okay, we must move on. Gabriel K., thanks for your question. Said, so because Roswell exists, therefore do aliens exist? I think they're saying that with the argument of the
Archaeology.
New Testament documents citing certain places that were real historical places. They're saying that if you use a reductio, you get in this trouble.
All I'm asking is you come up with your own tests, whatever they are, that you use to determine whether any document is historically reliable. And what I shared was, I have 4 tests. And one of those 4 tests that I use on any document that claims to be historical is, does archaeology support the place names listed in the document?
Gotcha. Next up.
Importantly, we have absolutely no evidence that the Exodus ever happened. We know for certain that Noah's flood never happened, and that Adam and Eve were never real, and the Tower of Babel never happened, and no guy ever lived for 3 days inside of a fish.
We must
And
keep
all of
going.
that is complete nonsense. We know that.
I can give you a chance to respond, Cliffe and Stuart, given there were some new points
If
brought
the
up there.
resurrection happened, that doesn't
Oh, it's
matter.
real
That can
simple.
all be wrong, but if the resurrection happened, it does not matter.
Real simple.
Resurrection
Aron.
didn't
all
happen
all
either.
of what you just listed is never in the Gospels. All of what you listed is outside the Gospels. I was
It
not
doesn't
arguing.
matter.
I was not arguing. Yes, it does matter. I was not arguing for the historicity of the flood. I was arguing for the historical reliability of the gospel.
Move
Well,
in.
that'll get
We
to
have
what we're going to talk
Tom's
about after the
chair.
Q&A.
Tom's chair, thanks so much for joining us. You look so comfortable under Tom right there on screen. Says, the Bible is just another religious story from a very religious time and place.
Is that a question?
All right. That's real simple. The reason you, as a thinking human being, should read the New Testament Gospels is because the civilization that you live in has been more profoundly influenced by Jesus Christ than by any other person. So if you're an intellectual, if you're someone who's interested in thinking through, why is the culture that I'm living in the way it is? You've got to read the person who influenced your culture more than anyone, Jesus Christ, to figure out, is he a liar or is he reliable?
Next up,
Or was he
Jason
not
Burris.
even real?
Jason
Which
Burris,
is the-
thanks
is
for
the
your
apparent
question.
thing.
Next up says, answer Aron's question, does the finding of Troy give evidence to Hellenistic faith? It's kind of like the Roswell question.
Our point has never been that archaeology is a reason to believe and to have faith. Our point was archaeology is one of the 4 tests that I gave to determine the historical reliability of a document called Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the New Testament.
Okay, so we know that all of the archaeological records.
But we do have one. This one's for you, Aron. It's from Patriot University, PhD. So honored to have you. Says, how was your vacation at Dinosaur Adventureland? Aron, did you go hang out with Kent Hovind and his crew? I didn't know that.
No, I never went to Hovind's slave camp.
Gotcha. Okay, Cystic to Strong. Thanks for your support. Appreciate that super sticker. Then Eric Veerthaler, 92, thanks for your question, said, would Aron ever debate a flat earther such as Nathan Thompson?
Yes, I would, but since Kent Hovind was just brought up recently, let me tell you, this is what I want to say, seriously.
What is it, Aron?
Wait,
we did. I'm sorry, Aron. It was just at that moment. Who did you say it cut out? Who did you say that we should get?
They just mentioned Kent Hovind.
Oh yeah, but we didn't hear it cut out when you said.
Right after you said, "This is what I really want to say," it froze right after you said that.
Yeah, I've got a complaint to my internet because I pay for commercial service, and so I should not have interruptions or stalls. Right. So I'm really pissed about that. But somebody mentioned Kent Hovind, and so you're going to mention flat earthers, and this is what I want to see. Yeah, I would gladly debate a flat earther, but what I really want to see, and I'm being sincere, I want to see Kent Hovind debate the best flat earther there is, because it would be wonderful, because this would be the first time in Kent Hovind's life when he ever had to use science to his defense, where in an argument he could potentially win.
So next, it would definitely be interesting. We've tried to. We'll try again. I know that Nathan Thompson, who I might be the best flat earth debater, wants to debate Hovind, but Hovind has not taken the bait. Cystic to Strong, thanks for your question, said, for both, does annihilation theory make more sense given the can't... Oh, we read that already. Let's see. We have another one. This one's from Meerkat SK5. TJump, if only a consensus can truly verify a claim, do you have a study that asked scientists from every field that whether the statement, quote, only a consensus can truly verify a claim?
Consensus doesn't verify anything. Consensus is the way you have people who assess the evidence and reliably understand it. But consensus isn't a verification.
Gotcha.
And consensus is when 98% of the experts in the field all have come to the same conclusion based on the same studies.
Gotcha. And this one's Patriot University PhD, very active tonight, says Aron Ra needs to sell his microbrew beer ASAP. That's right. I thought I remembered this. Go.
Yeah, I wish I had a microbrewer that did one batch of Godless Heathen, and he promised he was going to do more, and he disappeared. And it pissed me off because it was actually good. It wasn't a high ABV, but it was actually good. The taste, I mean.
Well, hopefully in the future. And then we have Strudel Slayer. Thanks for your support. I didn't see a question.
Strudel Slayer.
Does that mean something bad? It's like everybody does
No,
that.
no.
Okay,
I just love
like
these
a
usernames, like Cosmic Sphincter, and
Cosmic, yes. Meerkat SK5 and Strudel Slayer. I didn't get your question. But thanks for your super chat. Let me know in the live chat if you want to attach a question to it, and just put it as a normal chat. You don't have to do another super chat. Wilma, thanks for your question, said, to Aron and TJump, I myself struggle with having hope in humanity and not letting frustration consume me. How do you two deal with, creationists or still believe, or people who believe in mythology?
No, they're not nearly as bad as politicians. We need heavy doses of alcohol for that.
And I notice that politics is actually far less rational than religion. It's bizarre. In either case, we're talking about people who don't care what the truth is. They want to believe what they want to believe, and that's it.
Yeah, that seems very true. I've experienced that myself. Jeff Young, thanks for your question. Said, does anyone recognize? Let's see. They said they'd love to hear people like William Lane Craig or Bart Ehrman. We can work on seeing if Dr. Craig comes on, but Dr. Bart Ehrman will be on later this month. If you're looking for top-notch intellectuals, we will shoot for Irresistible Truth. Thanks for your questions. That Arnon, you mentioned the issue of free will with your opponents. What has your experience been with debating Calvinists since they are determinists?
I love Calvinists, the fact that they exist, because I can use their existence against the other body of Christianity. Gotcha. Especially when it comes to the idea of free will, especially when it comes to arguments of morality, because there just isn't any. I mean, Calvinism is just like Islam in that God decides God decides whether I'm going to believe or not. God decides whether I'm going to do evil or not. And then God decides that he's going to punish me for the thing he forced me to do. So I have no free will. Same thing with Calvinism. God decided in advance. So sin all you want to. You were predetermined to go to heaven, and it doesn't matter what you do. And you're going to go to hell no matter what you do. So
next up, let's see. OP, thanks for your question, said, if science works on consensus, then should we trust the scientists that believe in the flat earth in the 15th century or actually examine the data? I think they're saying, like, if we lived at that time.
Yeah, no scientist believed in a flat earth in the 15th century. First off, science does not work on consensus. So any one person can overturn the status quo. It's just the validity of the arguments and the evidence that he brings forth. That's why tectonic theory replaced expanding Earth theory, and it took until Wagner was no longer alive. Wagner was ridiculed during his own life, and yet after he died, eventually, all of the scientists realized one by one, they all realized, you know what, he had a point, and what he said works out. And you know what, he was right. That's what the consensus means, is that all the scientists have tested it and they've all realized, yeah, he was right.
Gotcha. And thanks so much for your question. This one comes in from, you guessed it, Patriot University PhD. Says, why did you switch from a stout to a, is it larger? Lager?
Lager. I'm not drinking a lager. What I had tonight, and I'm going.
What do you have tonight? Oh, okay.
And then I went to Full Grown Jack, which is a pumpkin stout. And then I went to Full Grown Hombre, which is flavored by ancho chilies. And then I went to another local brewery. These are all Dallas breweries. This is Revolver Blood and Honey, and this is an American ale.
Nice. That sounds really good. Which was the one you said you had tonight?
I had all these.
Oh, okay, there you go. Gotcha. You got it. And thank you for your question from Ryan Adams, who said, how can human experience be an accurate pointer to a supernatural? Wouldn't it only point to known and unknown?
All right. My experience of life is real. My experience of life is that science is a wonderful branch of knowledge. My experience and observation is that historical knowledge is a wonderful branch of knowledge. And my experience is that my interactions with people is not based on science. It's not based on history, although both of them influence me, but it's based on trust. And the way I trust someone is by amassing evidence that they are reliable. And then when it comes to trusting God, the question is, has God revealed himself accurately in Christ? And is the evidence pointing to Jesus being reliable, trustworthy? And I would argue the historical evidence of his life, teachings, death, and resurrection is that indeed Jesus Christ is reliable. And if not, please give me someone who is more reliable than Christ.
The famous atheist Ian Wilson became a Christian again. And Dawkins, Hitchens all hated it that A.N. Wilson became a Christian. And he said the main reason why is because he met so many Christians who had radical character change. That's one of
But
the
he couldn't find anybody that actually had evidence that they were correct. I have interviewed a handful of former atheists, that not just people like you see them all the time, people who say that they were card-carrying atheists or that they were devout atheists when you know they never really were atheists. I'm talking about people who we could verify were not just atheists, but atheist activists once upon a time, and who later adopted Christian belief. I've interviewed a handful of them. They do exist. There's only a few of them. There's a very few of them. But in each case, all of them, the reason that they believed was entirely emotional. They believed simply because they wanted to, because it made them feel good some way, just like a drug.
Next up,
That's both ways.
Except for Dr. Francis Collins, head of the NIH.
His was the most bizarre.
we must.
His
I
was
hate
the
to
most
say this, guys.
indefensible.
We really do.
I saw a waterfall.
So much.
I saw a waterfall that split into three directions, and I decided to lose my fucking mind and decide that means that the Trinity was real. What an idiot!
Warrior Invictus, thanks for your question, said the flood absolutely happened. Look at Inspiring Philosophy's video on it. Jesus is king. Atheism is cringe.
Sorry, I've seen Inspiring Philosophy's video on the flood that actually happened. You can also find that exact same account in my series on why the flood didn't happen. The 8-part series of how we know that various forms of science prove that Noah's Ark or the Noah's flood never happened, that there was never a global flood. What there was an actual flood around 2600 BCE and at the end of the Jemdut Nasur, which is centered on the city of Shuruppak, so that one city flooded. Yeah. And then the stories about that were exaggerated into ridiculous proportions. The only way that you can ever exaggerate a flood story is to say that eventually everything was flooded. And so there's a handful of people who told that exaggeration, except that there's important details missing. Like in one version of the story, the only people who survived was a man and a woman who hid in a seashell. And in another version of the story, all of the animals turned into fish and then turned into real people again. And then in another version of the story where the entire world was flooded, it was flooded with beer.
Next up, we have Andrew Handelsman says, Aron, I saw you leaving Dinosaur Adventureland with an Ark toy. I'll Photoshop.
No, you didn't.
I'll Photoshop that.
I've only been in Alabama once, and I was only there as long as it takes to drive through it.
You got it. And Gabriel K., thanks for your question, said, I am being serious for once. I have learned more from science than the Son of God has ever shown, and he has the power to let me know right now. Next up, Sphincter of Doom, thanks for your question, says, there's Cosmic Sphincter, says, Aristotle was very influential in modern science, and it took decades to overturn. The singular influence of a person on society isn't enough to accept. I think that's for you, Cliffe and Stuart.
I am very grateful for Johann Kepler, the father of modern astronomy. As he peered out of the stars at night, he exclaimed, "Oh God, I am thinking your thoughts after you." I'm very grateful for Galileo, for Copernicus, for Boyle, for Faraday, for Dr. Francis Collins. I am very grateful for all the science professors on university campuses across this country and around the world who have a deep commitment to science because they understand that a rational God created an orderly world, gave them rational minds, and they, by exercising their rational minds in a responsible way, can unlock the secrets of the universe.
You know, Kuhn in the paradigm shift.
Who lost their rationality when they jumped to unwarranted assumptions for no damn reason.
Kuhn's paradigm shift. You know how long it takes, if you read Kuhn, for a paradigm to change in society, whether it's Aristotelian or many others. You look at the Jews overnight, pretty much, after Jesus' resurrection, changing to Christians. That's a tough one to explain.
Overnight staying Jews?
Tremendously difficult. They believe that Jesus Christ
was tremendously difficult that they stayed Jews.
His own brother now all of a sudden never believed in him and became head of the Jerusalem church.
And you believe that?
And it was killed.
You believe that Jesus' own brother somehow didn't believe in him and then suddenly did?
It's in scripture and tradition. I mean,
and
what more do you
believe
want?
That?
You want Josephus too?
Next.
I totally
Yeah,
believe
I
that.
do want
You
Josephus.
just believe in
I'm
some
sorry.
flood
I
from
already
thousands of
have
years ago that I've
Josephus.
never even heard of. And you were
I've already-
certain of it.
I
You were
already
like, well,
have
I'll tell you the flood
Josephus.
that did happen.
I
was
already
like,
have Josephus supporting my side of the
We
argument.
must. I hate to
So
say
you
we
don't
must
get
move forward.
Josephus. I got him.
Next up, so we let's say appreciate this question. This one's coming in from Zakus. Says, if Jesus is historically reliable, how was he born before King Herod died and at the first census of Quirinius?
You are familiar with this, right?
Very difficult question. Good, hard question. Very perceptive. All right. First point. When you study the Syrian government, there were two people who were called governor. One was the head of the military, and the other was the head of the government. So it's quite possible that Quirinius served in two capacities as governor. One as head of military, two as head of the government. And therefore, it's possible that Quirinius was governor in 6543 BC, as well as in 5678 AD. Possible. We don't know. The text is silent, so we have to be honest. The text is silent, but that is a possibility.
Except that this is the word of God. And we are basing the value of our entire existence. Are we going to be tortured mercilessly, senselessly, with no forgiveness whatsoever, relentlessly, vindictively for all eternity? Or are we going to get the perpetual blowjob on ecstasy forever and ever and ever? All on whether we believe the atrocious bullshit story or not.
No, it's simply an issue of, if you want to live your life together with God, you'll spend eternity with him. And if you want to spend eternity, if you want him to live your life separate from him, then you'll spend eternity separate from him.
George Harrison died.
Each one of us. It's that
George Harrison died convinced that he was going to spend eternity with his personal God. But according to you, he's in hell because his personal God was Krishna. And you said that's wrong. You said Hindus don't say that. You said Hindus don't say that, but there are lots of Hindus who actually do say that.
We must move on to the next one. I hate to do this, but let's see. Unless you had a short and pithy reply, I do have another question. This one comes from Sphincter of Doom. Says, how do you test your faith? Refusing to consider the possibility of wrong is admitting you're not going to find out.
Jesus commands his followers to be skeptics. He says in the Sermon on the Mount, beware of false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves, and they will eat your lunch. So because good and evil are so intertwined in this world, Jesus commands us to be skeptics.
And Jesus commands that we not be skeptics, that we believe credulously, that we buy into his bullshit arguments on faith and for no other reason because we don't have any evidence. And he criticizes people who ask for evidence. He says, you, Thomas, you ask for evidence, but blessed is he who has not seen and yet believes. So, and you will not put the Lord thy God to the test. That's what Jesus said. Jesus said, do not be a skeptic. Believe what I said because I said so and for no other reason.
Next
that is
up,
not what he said to Thomas.
Thank you for your question,
said,
Warrior
Thomas,
Invictus.
Right here. He did not reprimand Thomas for his doubt.
Yes, he did.
No, he didn't.
With the exact verbiage I just
Thomas
used.
in his doubt, and he said, come on, Thomas, right here.
Blessed is he who has not seen and yet believed. Yeah,
That's
Jesus
correct.
actually said that.
He did say that.
Open up your book of fairy tales.
I know that.
And look it up. It actually does say that.
Quote Jesus. And say it's Jesus who said it. Say it's you.
Yeah, it was
Warrior,
Jesus who said that in your book of fairy tales.
We must move forward. Warrior Invictus, thanks for your question, said much more than one city in Inspiring Philosophy's video on the flood. Meltwater Pulse 1B Science catching up to flood stories / evidence the world over. I think that's finally
an objection for you, directed at me?
Yeah. It's going back to Inspiring Philosophy's video on the flood. They say much more than one city mentioned in Inspiring Philosophy's video, and Meltwater Pulse 1B.
Yeah, there was more than one city. I said it was centered on Shurapak.
Okay.
But it did affect other cities in the surrounding area. It was not a global flood.
They also said Meltwater Pulse 1B Science catching up to flood stories / evidence the world over. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, well, the world over does not relate to the flood of Shuruppak. I mean, in Greece, you had a similar flood legend that could have been based on the same thing, wherein the people escaped the flood by going to high mountaintops, which obviously, if it's a global flood and it covers everything the way the Bible said, obviously the Bible is still wrong again on the floods if the Greeks can hide on mountaintops. And then strangely, in Japan, they don't have any flood legends at all, which is weird because they get flooded regularly by having more tsunamis than anybody else ever has. I guess it's just that happens so regularly that it's not a joke. You don't even tell stories like that. I think that's what the issue is with them.
Next up, Karag Nightwolf says, question for the Christians, is there a valid and sound deductive argument with valid and sound premises for God raising Jesus from the dead?
Minimal facts I would start with. Then I would go to many eyewitnesses are still alive. Paul talks about 1 Corinthians 15, 3 through 8. Then I would go to the paradigm shift in terms of...
Gotcha. Soldier of Science, thanks for your question, said C and S. Cliffe and Stuart, do you agree that 90% of humans believe in their God based on when and where they were born?
No.
Next, Irresistible. Go ahead.
What's interesting about that is if you look at Hinduism, still mainly located in India. You look at Islam, still mainly in the Middle East, Africa. You look at Buddhism in the East. Christianity, 25% to 12% is spread out all over Europe, Latin America, China. It's the most well-traveled religion by far and away, which I think says something about it.
So go back to like 1400 BC, or excuse me, 1400 CE, and you have Sikhism, right, where you have Guru Nanak, who says God visited him to tell him that neither of the two great religions is the true path. And what are the two great religions? Hinduism and Islam. Christianity, according to God, didn't even merit a mention, right? So Christianity was not important in the 1400s, in the Middle Ages in Pakistan. Right, so that's what we get. The two great religions are Hinduism and Islam. Bingo.
And they're still located in their main where they began. They're still
so you just
there.
verified
Christianity's
that
all over.
You just verified unwittingly that the questioner's assumption is correct. That where they are born depends entirely on what they believe.
No, it's a genetic fallacy.
We don't have people who were born in the United States to Christian families suddenly have visions of Krishna.
You're an atheist because you're a secular atheist humanist because you were born in the U.S. and you're in Dallas, Texas.
Next up, thanks for your question.
That has no relevance to this conversation.
This one comes in from our dearest friend, Irresistible.
I just want to make a statement on what he just said. I have met atheists in Sharia countries. They just have to be quiet about it.
Next, Irresistible Truth, thanks for your question, said, for Cliffe and Stuart, what is the one argument that your opponents should believe that they are suppressing on purpose?
There is no way that I know TJump and Aron well enough to be able to answer that question. I feel that would be incredibly judgmental of me to answer that question. Okay, so I don't know them. But I do know that when my brother was at Princeton, his unbelieving friends would fire one difficult question at him after another. And around about midnight, my brother would say, all right, guys, if these questions are really keeping you away from Christ, we'll pull an all-nighter. But if the real issue is, I want to do my thing my way, and I don't want anybody telling me how to live my life, then let's face that fact. And let's stop hiding behind these intellectual smoke screens. Every single time my brother's Princeton classmates would say, Stuart, you're correct. We reject Christ, not because we have reasoned it through and we have found an option that is supported by more evidence. Rather, we reject Christ because we don't want God telling us how to live our lives.
Introduce your brother to me.
Thank you for your honesty.
Yeah, introduce your brother to me because I am not that person.
Good. I
don't believe you.
I don't
believe the bullshit story.
I don't know what Aron's
I don't believe the bullshit story you just told. Because that doesn't apply to me or any other atheist I've ever met in my life. Introduce me to your brother. We'll pull an all-nighter, and I'll fix his ass.
Well, next, all right, we'll wrap up with that. So I want to say thank you all for being with us tonight. We have got all of our guests linked in the description.
I still have a couple of questions.
Oh, that's right. Aron does have a couple specific questions for Cliffe and Stuart, if you guys are up for it.
Yeah, it's just two. It should be easy. I wanted a description from the Christians of what Jesus did, what was his purpose, and what did he accomplish? Let's start with that.
His purpose was to come, save, and buy back humanity, to change hearts, because ultimately we know in this world, education, technology, and science only do so much. Ultimately it becomes a heart change. So he came back to buy us back, to start changing things here and now, not to look at some pie in sky by and by, but instead, because this is going to be the new Jerusalem, the new heaven, the new earth is going to come here, that we should be on the front lines, just like the Christians in Africa, doing things against the AIDS crisis, for example.
So what changed?
What changed? When?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, Jesus shows up and something changed. What is it?
What is it like? I mean,
what did Jesus do?
Two-thirds of the Roman Empire became Christian within a few hundred years.
Within a few hundred years. So what
you mean like
did
the
Jesus
sociological or worldwide benefits of him being here? Is that what you mean?
What did Jesus do? It's the same question.
He was born in a feeding trough. He taught great things. He taught as one who had authority that no one had ever heard of before.
That's a whole other debate. Jesus taught
people,
utter inanity and
healed
bullshit.
People, healed the sick.
No, he didn't. He was a faith healer. He was a fraud. But I don't want to argue that. I want to know what your position is on what Jesus did. What was the change that Jesus made in our lives as people 2,000 years ago? What was the change?
Like they're ready for the second question. I hate to push us into that one, but
I mean, I could keep going, but did you want to? Yeah. Let's
James, go, James. What's the second question, Aron?
If you were always a good person, and you did not answer the first question, I want to be blanket on that. You didn't answer the first question at all.
Never answer any of your questions, Aron. You make that real clear.
I don't know why we even have these discussions then. So what if you were always a good person and you heard of Jesus, but you never believed in it because it just sounded like bullshit? Because it does sound like bullshit. Yep. And then you die. What happens to you?
You bet. It's real simple. I've only met one student in the past 38 years of speaking on university campuses who claimed to be a morally perfect person. That was at MIT. And when
did we say morally perfect?
I have lived a morally perfect life. All of his MIT classmates in that classroom burst into laughter.
Okay. I said good.
Jesus Christ defines good as morally perfect.
Okay, but I didn't say morally perfect. I said good.
Offers all of us forgiveness and eternal life. For those of us who have a sin problem.
If you don't believe the bullshit story, and you're good, not morally perfect, but taking everything positives and negatives, you're on the plus. You're on the positive, right? You do more good than bad,
right?
Because I don't believe in the two sides of extremes. I believe in the bell curve. Remember,
right?
So if you're on the bell curve and you're slightly on the good side of normal, right? But you don't believe the bullshit story,
right?
And then you die. What happens?
Well, I've worked in a lot of prisons, and I've never met an inmate who said that they were on the wrong side of the bell curve. They've always said they've been good people, and I have an ability to say that I'm a good person also, but I think that Jesus' analysis of the human heart shows that I'm not as good as I would like to persuade everybody that I am.
And even if that were the case, but it still works out that you're more positive than negative and you're slightly on the good side of the bell curve, then what happens?
What happens is when you sin, you're basically saying, God, take a hike. I want to live my life separate from you.
When you are basically a good person, as I said, weighing all your positives and negatives, you end up on the positive side. I'm having to ask the same question over and over again, but you never believe the bullshit story that is obviously a bullshit story, that you have to believe in God.
You must move
you have
forward.
to believe in specifically Jesus. You have to defy the first commandment to believe that there's another God before God, that he is the God that gets to God. Yeah, you have to defy the first commandment in order to be Christian. What happens if you don't believe that lie and you're basically a good person? What happens to your soul?
If you choose to live your life separate from God, God will not violate your decision.
What if you're a
You will
Hindu
spend eternity
or a
separate from
Jew
him.
or a
This is the
Muslim
third or
and
fourth
you're
question.
basically good
we do have
and
another
you don't
question from the
believe
audience.
Jesus? What happens to your soul?
I hate to do this, but I can give you guys.
I knew
Cliffe
I
and
wasn't
Stuart.
going to get an answer to that before I asked it. I just want everybody to know that.
I can give you guys a chance to answer it, but then we do have to go to the next question. We do
Give
have
them
a
a
couple
chance,
questions.
but you won't. They won't.
Here's
give me
the
an
answer. I'll give you the answer.
They won't.
I'd be playing God if I answered that. Is that an answer?
You just told me you're not going to give me an answer.
God,
Thank you.
Next
how
up,
is a human being
have
able
another
to say
one.
whether a soul's
Let's
going
see.
to heaven or not?
Cupcake for all.
Because
Sorry,
you have the
I missed your
doctrine that
question.
you say is the absolute truth
We,
and the revealed word of the one
we
true
do-
God.
I have to
just like
redirect us.
14 other religions have.
We do have to redirect us. Cupcake for all. Thanks for your question. Sorry I missed it. They said, Cliffe and Stuart, why did you call Camus a prophet? Do you understand the difference between prophets and philosophers?
Who? Camus?
Camus, C-A-M-U-S.
Oh, Camus.
Camus.
Yeah,
Embarrassing.
Albert Camus was a Nobel laureate author in like the 1950s.
Nailed it. He died in, I think, 51, I believe it is. Check me on that. So Camus became a Christian the final few years of his life before he died tragically in a car accident.
That's sad because he was a good philosopher up until then.
And what led him there was, again, it was the whole question of meaning of life. And he started reading the Bible for himself, got introduced to Christ. It wasn't through the Bible. It was the character of Jesus Christ that led him ultimately to say, okay, there is a meaning beyond me. And that is Jesus Christ in terms of all the intangibles that he has to offer in terms of love, sacrifice, forgiveness, why to help and serve other people.
We must move on.
Everything
We do
you
have
say
another one.
just
This one's
opens
from
up more
Gabriel K.
questions.
Thank you,
Camus
Gabriel
Journal.
K.
Camus Journal.
We appreciate your question. Gabriel says, when you pass, you will not walk into the light, but lead people into ignorance
No way.
through primeval darkness you left behind. I think that's an insult to you, Cliffe and Stuart. Sorry. Next up, I don't know if you want to respond. You can. Did you hear it?
Yeah, I mean that's hilarious because that goes both ways. We both think that we have the light when there is darkness on the other side. So we're both proselytizing in different ways to hopefully help the other side see the truth. So at least we're all truth seekers here trying to find the truth.
And
Next.
yet God is going to punish
Thanks
me
for
as
your
a truth
question.
seeker for
Appreciate
being a
this
truth
one
seeker.
is from Seth Nesmith. Says, Stuart, why do you claim God did anything if you can't even prove empirically that he exists to do anything? I can say a unicorns is those things. I think they're saying they could try to say that a unicorn caused the things that you think God caused.
Yeah, so if you're looking for empirically prove to me that I have to do that. I mean, can you even empirically prove that statement? I would start there. And then secondly, I would say, I mean, look at science. Aron loves talking about science. There is both a type of evidence leading to proof that's based off of what is produced in a lab, but then there's also forensic science. And so we can't do science, that type of science, proving things when we put somebody on the moon. It's based off of what has happened in the past, so it's based off of a type of history. Now, the Gospels and understanding who God is closer to that second type of science.
Well, yeah,
Gotcha.
just like everything you just
must,
said was wrong.
I hate to
I mean,
say it.
like
We
all
just,
of it.
I know.
Surprise.
Let's hopefully we can get a round 3 in.
All
That
of
would be
it.
fun. Thanks so much for your hanging out with us, everybody, in the live chat. Thanks to our moderators for doing a great job on banning hate speech. Appreciate that as well. And want to say thanks so much, though, to our guests. It's been a true pleasure. They're all linked in the description, folks. So if you want to hear more, you can. And so, yes, thank you very much, Cliffe, Stuart, Tom, and Aron.
I want to apologize
Thank you,
for
guys.
TJump for not letting him just run this debate.
I don't know. I just wanted to jump into the fight. I'm sorry.
No worries. It's always
I enjoy
intense.
popcorn.
We appreciate it's a lively one. We had another question. Seth Nesmith, thanks for your last minute question, said if you can't prove it and you can't show it, why should anyone listen to you? Again, it has the same amount of importance as Santa Claus.
Okay, so again, that's a type of proofism. You can't prove that statement, one. Secondly, going about that in that type of way, people disagree on what is real proof and what is real evidence, shown even here tonight. So what is proof? What is evidence? You have to break that down, and then you have to start to get to exactly what we've been talking about. What is historical evidence? And I think it's all about choosing Christianity to be ultimately rational has to do with, is it existentially satisfying with our experience, our emotions, all that we've talked about in terms of love, desires, ultimate hope, and then also, is it intellectually credible? And I think with those two, Christianity combines those beautifully. I think atheism is pretty good here with some of the rationality. I think it totally is horrible in terms of existentially fulfilling. That's why a lot of atheists kill themselves, like Camus talked about doing.
Excuse me? Why are we happier than you? I don't get that.
They're not happier.
How do we? No, we are. We're less criminal than you are. We are statistically more moral than you are.
Susan Blackmore made that comment to me completely false. Did you not just see the study that came out of Harvard?
I hate to interrupt, but we had Seth Nesmith has another question. Says, what the heck is proofism? Laughing my butt off. Good debate.
Yeah,
Aron,
there's no such thing as
said,
proofism. The Christians here are arguing a complete straw man. Science doesn't prove things in the positive sense. Next. We show that there's a substance there. Christians can't show that there's a substance there. So that's the purpose of the whole argument.
You can't prove a negative.
Show that there's a there. They're done. You can't
prove a negative. Atheism is a negative. You can't prove it.
I don't have to prove it. I said Hitchens' razor. Right. What is asserted without evidence is dismissed without evidence. If you make an unsupported assertion, it doesn't warrant serious consideration. You are making an unsupported assertion of impossible absurdities that is not supported by anything and has not even a possibility, yet you're insisting that it's absolutely true. No, you're full of shit.
Did I say absolutely true once?
I don't know that you did. You're completely convinced of it, and that means the same thing.
We have
your dad here kept saying over and over again, I am convinced of these impossible absurdities and I'm not going to be reasoned with. Yeah, he did say that over and over again.
Not once.
Next,
yes, he did several times. I am convinced. I am convinced that because we both agree that love exists, that means that fairies exist.
Not once did I say
that. Magic is real.
We must go to the next thing, which is...
Your dad did actually say that because love exists, and we both agree that love exists, he then made a bunch of false statements that love is not chemical, that love is a matter of choice, which is complete bullshit.
And that his
faulty understanding about that caused him to assume wrongly that magic is real.
These guys are
he did over and over again. I am convinced.
It's 11:30 over there. We have to. But we do have want to say thanks so much. The word on the streets here is that allegedly hitting like helps a video. So if you enjoy this debate, if you're like, I like that was a good one, hit that like button, as we do appreciate that support. And as mentioned, all of our guests are linked in the description. We hope to see you tomorrow night for a juicy one as Team Skeptic returns. First time in a while. It's been a long time. He will be taking on Conspiracy Castle. That should be a juicy one. That's at the bottom right of your screen. And want to say thanks so much for hanging out with us, folks. We hope you keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. Take care. And one last thanks to our guests, Cliffe, Stuart, Tom, and Aron, for being here.
Thank you, James. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, gents.
Thank you. Take care and have a great night, everybody. We'll hopefully see you tomorrow. here, friends. What is up? This is the, you could say, after credit scene. Want to say thanks so much. You guys, seriously, you make it so fun. I appreciate you just hanging out here. And so we were doing these like post credits, like post debate credits scenes of me just wanting to hang out with you, because it's like I never really get to talk to people during the debate, like I'm kind of focused, and there's a little bit of I get to say hello in the live chat, but getting to directly like this is honestly a true pleasure for me. And so it's also great to get feedback if if you've got thoughts that you'd like to share or questions. And one thing too, I want to let everybody know that we've always wanted to be very open about how we do the show. So like when I started, there were some channels that they did what basically we do now, and I was kind of like trying to like learn how they did it, but it was like like they were kind of more secretive about it. And Matt Culbertson, good to see you, buddy. Matt was like there back before we even became a debate channel. That's like we used to be called Modern Day Hysteria, if anybody's around. It used to just be about controversial topics and just like a kind of a smattering of them. And so yeah, Big Daddy Sheep and Z, good to see you. Thanks so much for coming by. Lily B, thanks for that love. That seriously appreciate that. That means a lot. And yeah, basically we are open to telling you how we do everything. We don't keep it a secret. We are willing to tell anybody. We basically we use OBS and we do a window capture and we pull Zoom into it, and it's that easy. It's pretty easy. It's easier if you're on a PC in terms of the audio connecting, but and it you gotta like learn a couple things with like OBS because it's not super intuitive. As you know, it took us a long time to figure out the audio, but yeah, basically, if you do want to know, we're happy to share. We don't have any secrets. We can tell you what software we use. I can give you my opinion on like what to do and how to do it. So yeah, we do appreciate you guys so much. And trying to think of upcoming debates. Tomorrow should be a juicy one. That's going to be a lot of fun with, as I mentioned, Team Skeptic coming back and Conspiracy Castle. Also, we are pumped though. I'm trying to think of basically King 101 said, James, you should probably advise less verbal aggression and drinking in the debate atmosphere. Like, see, it was a wild one tonight. I agree. It was, you could say, a controlled burn. It was close to being a dumpster fire, and maybe it even drifted into that some. But overall, it's been, it was passionate, but still reasonably controlled, and that's usually what we're going for is kind of that walking the line. And thanks for your feedback. NC Servisto says, keep on trucking, James, your platform is great, a great achievement. That means a lot. Thanks so much. And it's all credit to all the people that have helped us, which is like everybody. Like, this channel really is a community effort, and so we appreciate it so much. Everybody out there. One big thing that people have done, also want to give huge shout outs to people who have like connected us to like speakers. They're like, hey, Mr. Reagan, do you want to have him on? And I was like, yeah, it'd be awesome. And they're like, his YouTube channel is we talked to him and he said he'd be willing to come on. We're like, that'd be awesome, thanks for doing that. And so they would help us connect with those people. That is one way. A lot of like a ton of ways though, and so really do appreciate that. Bruce Wayne says, I think Seth Nesmith would be a wonderful moderator, James. I vouch for him. Well, pleased to meet you, Seth. And let me know if you would, if you would like to be a mod, as we really only have one rule, which is just no hate speech. And thanks for your super chat from Strudel Slayer, who says, hope this gets through. Tom needs recognition on his speech about why we help people on the other side of the globe. Beautiful. I'm so baffled on what that means. Sorry, friend. Maybe it's because it's late. It's like going on 10 for me. But they say Tom needs recognition on his speech about why we help people on the other side of the globe. Oh, I see what you're saying. Like, you're saying like Tom has an argument for why we should give to people who are on the other side of the planet, and his argument or speech is a good one. And so that's interesting. I've never heard it, but I'm totally like pumped to hear it. And we do we couldn't agree more. One of the charities that we like to give to through our like charity drives is Save the Children, which is basically globally they try to help children in poverty with things like just helping them get fed and get clean water, and also helping provide an education. And so we couldn't agree more. Spooky Bed Hair, thanks for your feedback. Said all you need now is a wristwatch and you were all set. I don't get it. Sorry, I don't. I wish I did. A wristwatch. You mean like then I'd look like professional? Is that it? I don't know. I don't know if we're ever going to be professional, folks. Thanks for your kind words, Lily B. Lily B. Ridge and Hyde said maybe you say to your debaters to equalize their microphones. Sometimes it's very ear-killing. Tinnitus coming. I couldn't agree more. We do try to do that before the show now, which we didn't used to do, which is embarrassing. But now before the show, we do a sound test to try to make sure everybody's on the same level. For some reason, oftentimes it like, I don't know if it's people's mics, if they have some sort of smart mic that adapts throughout the debate, or if it's just that the yelling sometimes happens. Seth Nesmith, thanks for being a mod. I'm modding you up right now. And same thing, just, we just ask the mods, please don't insult anybody. If you want to give your opinion on who you think is winning, like, that's actually fine. We consider you like a volunteer that helps the channel, but like, and so like we don't like hold you to the same standard that if I were to come out and be like, oh, so-and-so totally won, or, I'm going to do an after show on how somebody got blown out of the water, that's like not what I'm going to do and what MDD per se would do. But as mods, like, I think it's like fine as long as we have a mix of people who are, I just don't want you to feel like you're on eggshells as a moderator. I don't want it to feel like, like I do, I want you to be serious about getting rid of any hate speech, but I don't want you to feel like you're like working really. I want you to feel like you can still have the freedom to say what you want other than insulting people. Spooky Bed Hair says you sometimes start late. So true. Wouldn't be us if we didn't start late. Big Daddy Sheep NZ says if you need more mods, I'll become one. Willing to give you a shot, Big Daddy. I just added you, so appreciate that support. That help means a lot. And I'd say like mods, if you can help. One thing that we've been asking mods to do recently, and I know that it might feel awkward. You might feel like, oh man, like I don't want to do that. Like don't feel like you have to force it. But if you are willing to greet new people, so if you see someone you're like, I don't think I've seen them here before. I've just been encouraged that, we've learned from some people that this channel is like a community for them. Like it really does. It's a place where they feel welcome and they feel like, hey, this means a lot to me that I get to, like just kind of, sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. And that being the case, we do want to basically, we want to welcome people. And so if you're up for it, please do feel free to just say like, hey, like God of Spaghetti, I've never seen you here before. Want to just let you know, we hope you feel welcome and all that good stuff. So there is an after show. Oh man, I don't have the link in the description. I'll see if David P. Neff, if you guys know David P. Neff's channel, he's hosting an after show. But if he sends me the link, I can put that in the description for people. I don't know if it's going to be in there, so don't hold your breath. And let's see. I agree. Sometimes we have some unsavory characters, as Erica would say, that, like spouting hate speech. And it's true. We don't want them. We don't want that happening. I do want those people here so we can hopefully change them. That like hopefully they can kind of like realize like that it's not good to hate people. And so we do want to have a truly diverse mix of people, not because we value any sort of hate speech. We obviously don't. We ban it. But when we do have people here from all walks of life, our hope is that they would kind of brush shoulders with people and kind of leave any sort of hateful group that they might be involved with. And then thanks Lily B saying, I could be a mod in the future. I'd be down. I'm a social sciences student, so I know of a couple things about hate speech. Yeah, I mean, we're pretty, let's see. I mean, like hate speech is like pretty easy. Like we just don't want the words that you would probably usually think of as hate speech. And so, yeah, it's pretty rare that we get it, to be honest. I think overall, at least, when you think of all the people in chat. But I'm willing to give you a shot, Lily B. I hope mods don't feel triggered when I sometimes take the mod wrench away. Thanks, King 101. Appreciate your kind words, and thanks for being so respectful. I really do appreciate that. I appreciate that people like not get triggered and take it personal if we ever take a wrench away. It's just that if sometimes it's like if I see a mod and they're like, so and so is such an idiot, and I'm like, it's not what we're hoping for from a mod. So we hope you understand that it's like I'm not trying to be a jerk. It's like, I don't know, in a way, wouldn't it be like a relief because you're doing like you're not like tasked with being a mod, like it's not work. So like if you don't have the wrench anymore, maybe I would hope it might feel liberating. I don't know, but thanks for your kind words. God of Spaghetti, you said just brigade the chat because their position has no merit. Yeah, it's true. That is something that some hateful people sometimes do try to do a blitz on the chat. And I didn't know that the first time we had Enoch and Stryker here, some of their fans. I don't know a lot about these guys, but we saw some people come that night on their first debate here where I think they were like trying to blitz the chat, like trying to make it move so fast that we couldn't keep up with the hate speech. So we learned our lesson, and I think we're still deleting hate speech, but I don't know if we got all of it, and that's obviously not what we want. So we do want to delete everything. So let's see. NC Sorvisto, thanks for partying with us. Let's see. But yeah, I'm probably going to rock and roll in a second, but really do want to say we appreciate you folks. Perfect One says, if you all are looking for mods and you feel that you know me well enough, I'd be pleased to serve as a moderator for you. We'll give you a shot. I mean, we've got a lot of mods though too. And so kind of like that'll be it for tonight. But thanks for your being willing to help. That really does mean a lot. Rich and Hyde at 6 a.m. there. Stay awake always for your show. The chat here is crazy sometimes. Thanks for staying awake. That's nice of you. I hope you get enough sleep during the day. Zacuse said, hey, James, you're one of the ones who gets close to the right pronunciation. Literally the letter Z in the word goose, but a C instead of G. So I guess it must be Zacuse. Appreciate that feedback. And Carnivorous Ape says, if that's the case, then why does Praise have a wrench? He was doing that to Aron pretty much the entire time. I don't know if you noticed, I actually did take Praise's wrench away. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. And Bruce Wayne says, what is the song that is played on this channel? Let me look that up. It's in the description. I think it's down there right now. And the name of it's World Goes Wild by Above Envy, and that's always under description. Mods, if you can do a favor too, if anybody asks for the song, if you just let them know, say, hey, that's actually, James already put that in the description for you. Thanks for your kind words, Thanlin101, who said, we appreciate your work and the channel. Thanks for that. Appreciate that. Big Daddy Sheep says, have you got any news on the special guest debate and the GoFundMe or whatever? Yeah, thanks for asking. I think we're probably going to do it. Based on the feedback last night, if you haven't heard, folks, we are considering like a high profile debate. So like big time name, I would say kind of up there on the level of like close to like Richard Dawkins level. So like biggest we've had yet, I'd say Bart Ehrman maybe would be the biggest we've had or yet to have. And this one would probably be like maybe bigger. So that is one that I can't blame speakers. Like, it's a very reasonable thing if they have an honorarium. Like, I think sometimes people get weird about money and they're like, kind of like, oh, it's like, you shouldn't do it for money. And it's like, I don't see why it's wrong if a speaker wants an honorarium. Like, it's a consensual deal. We don't have to pay anybody if we don't want to in order to have them on. And their time is valuable. I mean, like it's true. Like a lot of these people get paid big bucks, way more than we usually have to pay if they go speak somewhere like in a live venue. And so I will say this: we are considering it, and so I can only tell you that this is like totally a giveaway. The person's initials are MS, but we are trying to set it up. And basically, that's funny. Appreciate that, Seth. Helping out Bruce Wayne. We're thinking we're probably going to do a Kickstarter. We would probably do $3 to watch it live. It'll always be public. We don't want any of our debates behind a paywall. But so it will be public like the day after in the next couple of days. But on the day that it's live, that's something we're like, hey, would you help us out covering the honorarium? Because sometimes we pay honorariums and we don't have the super chats come in to cover it. And it's not a big deal because the channel's still growing, which is cool. Like, we're excited about the vision. Like, we are not ashamed to say that, yeah, we're trying to grow. Like, we think that there's a value to this. And so we, at the same time, though, like for me, trying to kind of crawl out of debt. So as a student, it's my own choice that I was a student. So the debt was my choice. But at the same time, given that, regardless of what put you in the debt, it's kind of like where I'm like, well, maybe if everybody wants to put in $3 to watch it live, that can probably help cover the honorarium for some of these bigger names. And this one would be remote, so it would not be in person. And that is kind of why it's like $3. Is that it's like $3 is like a cup of coffee, right? Nowadays, Panera's like $2.60 with tax. It's probably like $2.80. So we're kind of like, hey, if we just do $3 for watching the live stream, that I think is fair. And again, it's like, well, if you don't want to put the $3 in, like, it's not a problem. You could watch it for free the next day or a couple of days after. And so, but yeah, we're thinking probably $3 for the live watch. We might, and then for questions, we might do kind of like pre-super chats. So instead of having super chats during the stream, we would maybe do something like, hey, do you want to ask a question? And, those will probably be more expensive to try to help cover the costs. But we might instead just say, hey, thanks for Language and Programming Channel for understanding and not worrying about the mod thing. Is that basically, yeah, we might do like questions that are maybe even like, I know it's like, it sounds like you might be like triggered by this, but like to help cover that cost, because the total cost would probably be about $2,000, because we do want to give the other person at least some honorarium because they've helped the channel a ton. That person, I can tell you, is Inspiring Philosophy. He's never asked for anything. He's never taken anything. And that's not true of every a guest. And there's nothing wrong with, like I said, wanting an honorarium. That's fine. But the fact that Inspiring Philosophy, Mike Jones, has never asked for one, he's never required one, that's pretty impressive. Like, it's very selfless. That's very giving of him. And so that's why I want to help him get some honorarium as well. And so, yeah. So, but yeah, so the questions might be like $50 purchasing a question beforehand, just as a fundraiser, kind of to help raise the money. And we're open to different ideas, so we'll want your feedback once we open up that Kickstarter, as I think we'll probably do. And we'll probably do like an official poll to get like a vote from people. And if people are just like, no, like, don't do that, I don't like this idea, then maybe we'll just say, all right, well, maybe we'll just pass on it. Maybe someday in the future if it's in person. So yeah, but yeah, thanks so much, folks. Want to say we appreciate you. We'll give you some deets about that within a month. And it's just that it's something that I like take really seriously. Is I'm like, if we're gonna, like, even though it's it's only $3 to watch the thing live, we like, that's like, for me, I just don't want to be like a panhandler, like, I don't want to be like, hey, money. And so Seth Nesmith said, James, do you think you would do this multiple episodes or just one to pay for the cost? So, we would not do like every debate like this. This would be a one-shot thing where, we would do a one-shot thing where it's like, we see how it goes. If people like it, cool. Maybe we'll do it again if we want to get somebody like Richard Dawkins eventually. And because we absolutely believe we can get to that point of like hosting like maybe Richard Dawkins, Jordan Peterson. Those are like the dreams. And so let's see. Big Daddy Sheep said, I would say the GoFundMe $3 is much better and more accessible to the audience than a super chat fundraiser. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. the questions prior, that like the idea of doing it $50 is that it's like, I just don't know. I mean, maybe what we'll do is what we could do is this. Maybe we just open it up. We say, hey, do you want to watch it live? If you think this is actually a cool idea, like if you even are on board, or if you just don't like it, let us know. And then if we have enough people like sign up, like if we're like, whoa, like 500 people put down $3, then it's like, oh, okay, like maybe we can lower the price for the questions during the Q&A. The only reason that I'm thinking of like possibly saying like, hey, if you want to ask a question, are you willing to put in $50? Because I agree, that's way more. We rarely ever get a super chat for $50. The reason would just be that it's like if we only have 100 people sign up and they're like, yep, here's my $3. It's like, cool, we have 300 live watchers, or I should say $300 from those 100 live watchers. We still have to cover $1,700. And maybe we can, through the months of promoting it, we could like get enough people to cover that. But that's the only reason why the questions would be more expensive. So Rich and Hyde, thanks for your feedback. Said, don't be ashamed to do the money thing. You need to grow. Investing is the best thing too. In-person debates. I agree. It would be great if it was in person. And I do lament the fact that the first one would be remote. So it would be just like our normal setup, where basically the speakers would be like doing it from their homes. And so, yeah, I mean like, so yeah, it's not ideal, but with COVID right now, it's kind of hard to do in person. And so let's see. Seth Nesmith says, yeah, if you had big names, definitely charge that much. So it sounds like, and then I agree, Rich and Hyde, like we're pumped about growing. We're not ashamed of it. That's something that it's like, we're like absolutely just like, hey, like we're excited to grow. We think we have something cool to offer the world, and we're going after it. We're excited about what we do. We love it. I'm probably don't sound like it because I'm like about to fall asleep. I'm really tired, but I love it. And let's see. Spooky Bed Hair said, do you have a member/join thingy like some channels? We don't. What do you guys think about that? Do you guys think that would be cool? Like, I'm totally would love to hear your thoughts. We maybe would do that if people would think it's valuable. I don't know what the perks are. I've got to learn, to be honest. And then Andrew T said, update on the Camboy debate. I don't know what Camboy means. Like if we had a camera boy there? I'm like confused. But let's see. Jaden Havener says, when you first started the channel, how did you get people on to debate, seeing that not many people watched early? It's so true that not many people watched early. The simple truth is, in terms of our big leaps in growth when we were a tiny channel, Kent Hovind, for real. We had Kent Hovind on like once a month. That was before we, sometimes we got on his nerves a little bit. And I don't blame him for that. Seriously, don't blame him for that, folks. Like, because sometimes that's a hard thing where it's like, we had somebody on here said something bad about Hovind after Hovind left, and it was true that like it was like I should have done a better job of saying like, all right, he's not here to defend himself. And so that's something I like kind of learn as you go with time. You kind of get the experience. And so, but yeah, Kent Hovind helped a lot, and he's willing to go on almost any channel as long as you don't burn him. Otherwise he's kind of like, well, forget that. And so, but we do think he'll probably come on within the next month. Mark Drisdale is working on it. So let's see. Big Daddy Sheep and Z said, Modern Day Debate, I would definitely do a member thing in Patreon. Thanks for that, man. Let's see. Said, honestly, just making some custom emojis are often enough. It's more to show our support and get a green name. Huh, that's cool. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, we can definitely do that. And then, but yeah, they said seeing that not many people watched early on. So Ken Hovind was one. Nephilim Free is actually like super open to debating. And Neph, when we started, like Neph was a giant because we had like 200 subs when I first asked Neph to come on, and he's like, "Yeah, sure, I'd love to." And so we were like, "All right, wow, this is awesome. We got like Nephilim Free," because it's true. It's funny when we have these huge name people on. A lot of them, they're like, "Oh my gosh, Nephilim Free's still around." And these are like people that have grown to be like hundreds of thousands of subs, but they still remember back in the day when there were very few YouTubers, Nephilim Free was always there debating. So everybody at some point crossed swords with Neph in the past. I would say consistency though. Yeah, it was like at the very first debate we ever hosted was just my buddies, from school. They came on and debated immigration. Back then we thought that was like too controversial, so I deleted it. I wish I didn't, but I thought that YouTube was gonna like come for us. So I did not know that, because now we do way, way more controversial debates. Camboy versus simp debate would be epic. I still don't know what these means. I've heard the SIMP word. I'm trying to not get YouTube to. We're trying to like be more mainstream and like not talk about simps all the time. But let's see. Also, Dr. Avi's willing to debate on veganism. We definitely want to have that, actually. Lily B said, "What are your thoughts on having Alden of Alden's number fame on the channel?" Oh man, we've totally wanted to get Alden on ever since that debate. What was it, last week? Jaden Havener said, "Is there a modern day debate studio, or do you just work from home?" This is just a homemade studio. It's actually like really, what's the word I'm looking for? Not fancy. This is just like draped over a kind of like a, I don't know, like a furniture thing behind me. I've got a black sheet from Walmart, and it's the kind that doesn't wrinkle that much, at least. And then I've got a blue light that I shine onto it. And so this little guy, where is it? There it is. This is my light. I got a blue bulb on Amazon for like $5, and then the lamp on Amazon as well. You can just clip it on. So that is, now it's off, and then when it's on though, this is what you guys see, what it looks like. I just feel like it adds a little bit of like, I don't know, looks kind of cooler. And then, yeah, that's right, Rich and Hyde, you're right, the old blue layout. We used to just have like a wrinkled old blue sheet that would hang behind me. And then if you remember a really long time ago, we had like the background. I would used to like shoot them at do streams at school, and like they have these like artistic things that are like chilling out in the what's the word I'm looking for? Big room, courtyard, the inside courtyard. Jason Havener said, "What's the most controversial topic you hosted on the channel?" Maybe I think the race debates are pretty controversial. I think, like the debates on whether or not COVID is a hoax. That's one that I'm still a little bit nervous that'll get us in trouble, but we said we'd host anything, so that won't clearly get us kicked off of the platform. Carnivorous Ape, thanks for your questions. G-Man versus Nathan Thompson debating on Flat Earth would be hilarious. I agree, that would actually be awesome. And then, but yeah, so, all right, folks. Love you guys. Seriously, I just really appreciate you partying here. Let's see. That's good to know. I didn't know that you can get in trouble for hosting banned people. Because I know that, Oliver's not banned yet, but probably will happen. But thanks for your kind word, Vlad Teeps, who said, "I think I speak for most when I say your channel is refreshing." That means a lot. Jaden Havener said, "Are you full-time on Modern Day Debate, or is this a side type of thing that you do in the downtime? What did you do before you went full-time?" I'm not full-time, actually. This is just a hobby. I'm working on my doctorate, and it's exhausting. I wanted something to help me stay sane, something I enjoyed, and that I could like learn new things. And the tech and stuff, like learning that is already kind of a challenge. But then it's cool to get to listen to debates. So yeah, like my Monday through Wednesday is unbelievably busy. I'm like dead after that. And thanks, Rich and Hyde, for that feedback on the audio. We used to have terrible audio, and it was for like months. It was just terrible. it would just go, oh man, you thought so, yeah. But anyway, we yeah, so it's like I teach a couple classes. I teach general psychology, which is really fun. I do love it, and it's a blast. But it's tiring because I'm also like doing the research stuff. I'm also taking 4 classes, which is a lot for. I'm clearly in the early part of the doctoral program. I'm in my 3rd year, and it'll probably be about 5 years that I'm here, maybe 4. But yeah, so it's like it's usually you don't take that many classes in a doctoral program unless it's early on. So it's like this is a fun hobby for me, and I started it while I was here in the doctoral program too. It was a first year, and I used to shoot it. We used to stream when because now, yeah, so basically I used to share an office and would do it when my office mate wasn't there. So Jaden Havener said, what's the criteria for someone to come on your channel to debate usually? We usually, this is like, and then I'll take Big Daddy Sheep. I'll answer your question, and then I've got to rock and roll. I'm so tired. We usually, there are a couple things. One, we ask for a prior debate now. That's a big one. It's really important because we do have the audience now. The audience is very, like, frankly, they're getting pickier. So, like, they want more experienced debaters, people who put in time working at it. And they know, like, they can tell when somebody's, like, when it's not their first rodeo or not. So that's a big one. And seeing footage, like, helps a lot. And then the other one is if you have a partner lined up, that helps a ton. Right now, I just can't, not during the semester, I can't set up stuff. I can't believe I've been sitting here 3 hours. Wow, that's crazy. So finding a partner is huge. I would say, like, I would probably be more, yeah, so it's like that. I just can't set people up. I can't be a broker during the semester. It's hard. I am willing to during fall break, winter break, all that, summer break especially. But right now, it's just like a person would definitely have to have a partner. And then, let's see. Big Daddy Sheep said, do you secretly take notes on everyone? No, I don't. Although I do keep notes on, like, who are, I know maybe it sounds mean, but it's like, the audience wants to watch good debaters. And so I do now take notes on, like, when I realize, like, this person's not as strong as I thought in terms of how good of a debater they are or how bad. And, like, I've got debate experience myself. Like, I used to debate on here a lot when we were really young as a channel. So I debated, like, Chris, Biblical History Skeptic, Jared, TJump. I think we debated at least twice. They're old, but you can look them up on the channel. They're still here. Kyle Curtis, if you know who he is, he's kind of gone. But we had, like, kind of a loosely speaking debate. It wasn't really a debate, but you can see some of, like, my in-person debates that I used to do, and these are, like, ancient. So these are, like, 6 or 7 years ago. I used to debate in front of, like, a live audience, and so that is something that if you so I do have, like, experience in it, and so I feel fairly good about making decisions on who looks like they're experienced or not as debaters. Jaden Havener said, are you personally a Christian or a theist? I am. I'm both. I'm a Christian and a theist. And let's see, politically, kind of independent. I really don't know where I stand politically. And but yeah, so let's see. I see a question from Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne, thanks for your question, said, well, how do I get experience debating without getting an opportunity to debate? There are a lot of other channels. Sorry, that's, like, the quick and easy answer. Gospel Truth is happy to have atheists, Christians, that channel with, I'm so tired. I think it's Wayne. But awesome guy, really good guy, and he's happy to have anybody come on. Not anybody, but, like, he's more open than I am now. I'm, like, pickier. But Bright Romeo said, James, have you guys thought changing platforms, maybe like Twitch? Yeah, I've thought about that really briefly. I don't think that I don't think we would. But it's something that I'm like open to if it seemed like there were really good reasons to do it. Like maybe we stream live on Twitch, and then we release the videos on YouTube. We could do that, but they're just, I don't know. We'd have to do a poll. Maybe if we do a survey and we find out what percent of our YouTube watchers, our normal audience, has a Twitch account, so that it would be easy for them to switch over. That would be informative. Celtic People Archive, when's the next debate on race? That I honestly don't know. And frankly, like those debates, I feel like people just haven't been enjoying them as much. So it might be a while, to be honest. It depends. If it's like a bigger name person like that is like really stoked to do it, I'm like, yeah, I suppose. Like we owe a lot of favors. And so if it was like, you know, if like Destiny or somebody wanted to, it'd be like, sure. Like, because they've helped us a ton. Destiny and Vosh and a lot of other people. Kim, she was awesome. And then Big Daddy Sheep says, oh, that's news to me. So if I go back early enough, I can find them. Time to go on a little lurk and see what James is like as a debater. Yeah, I think there's maybe one still on here with me and Suris and Ocean. And yeah, I'm like definitely more assertive in debates. But the in-person ones I think are the best. Because the other ones with like TJump and Chris, they're like in McDonald's because I didn't have a place to stream. So they're really bad quality, but they're fun debates. And then in Tom and I still tease each other about who's better. Andrew Handelsman says, are you a Trump supporter? No, I'm not a Trump guy. I'm not as like anti-Trump as a lot of people. Like a lot of people, they're just like going on about like things that I'm like, these seem like kind of minor things compared to the bigger things we can focus on in terms of like criticisms of Trump. Because I mean, I hope anybody would admit there are some things that Trump is, where it's like, you know, there's some bad things that have been done or said, where it's like, but like I said, I'm not like the type that's like all like anti-Trump and like foaming at the mouth. And I do kind of, I think a lot of those people actually, oftentimes unintentionally make critics of Trump look, you know, insane. And then Jaden Havener said, what's your best advice for someone who wants to start a YouTube channel dealing with Christian apologetics or atheist channel? Collaborations are huge. YouTube, the reason that we've grown so fast, one theory I have is because we've had collaborations every single night. We're collaborating with two people every night. So even if it's a person with no channel, when they come on and maybe they post it to their friends on Facebook and like two people come that way, like you're still like getting greater exposure by working with other people. And so frankly, I think collaborating with other people is a great way to do it. And then consistency with any channel. I think anybody can be a YouTuber if they stick with it long enough. There's just enough people out there that like enough topics that eventually they'll find you. You just have to keep putting out content. That's huge. And Bruce Wayne said, no worries, I kind of figured that was what was expected. It was kind of a joke of a question. Oh yeah, no, it's kind of true though. I mean, like I've thought about that. Like, we don't want to like close the door on people, but they're. Let's see. Andrew T said, "What's the funniest debate you've had so far?" The other night, I was laughing pretty hard with Vosh here, but I think it was probably with like when we used to have Darth Dawkins on. And I used to like giggle, and like he would get angry, and he would like, and that would make me laugh more. I couldn't help it. Let's see. Rich and Hyde said, much respect to be a Christian and let so many atheists speak. You seem to be so much abroad from your fellow Christians. Keep it up. Tolerance has to be bigger than personal belief. I personally, like my personal beliefs are most important to me, but I hold tolerance as like a huge value. And so for me, it's like we do want to give everybody a fair shake, you could say. And then I think that's it in terms of like questions. So I appreciate you guys for your kind words. It really does mean a lot, and we really do. You know, we want people to feel welcome. So no matter what walk of life you're from, we do appreciate you as a person. Just hanging out here, we enjoy your company. It means a lot. And yeah, thank you guys so much just for being so supportive of the channel. All the stuff you do in terms of like likes, shares, that really does have an impact. And so we appreciate you guys having done that in the past. Because we can see like on videos where we see like, whoa, like a lot of people shared that video, and you know, even when we don't even ask, so it's like really do appreciate that. And so, yeah, Lily RO says your giggle attacks are the best. It makes me giggle. Like, I thank you for that, Lily. That really does mean a lot. I laugh so hard sometimes. And so it's just that it is fun. I do enjoy doing this a ton. So yeah, thanks so much. And Lily B, last question. Whatever happened to Godless Girl? Godless Girl said FAG in a debate, and so we're like, oh, come on, we're not gonna. So I don't know if it's forever that Godless Girl is banned, but you could say that Godless Girl is banned. So, but thanks so much, everybody. We hope you're well. We hope you have a great rest of your night, though. It's always fun, and we will see you next time, hopefully. So thanks, and take care. Last question from Andrew Handelsman. This is the post-credits scene. I got two questions. Zahn, no, I'm not a flat earther. I appreciate you asking. I do want all flat earthers to feel welcome here, but I'm not one. And then Andrew Handelsman, thanks for your question, said, do you have a hard time staying neutral when you're the host of the Atheist versus Theist? Maybe a little bit. I also I think my biases, to be completely real, is like sometimes I have the bias of where like I almost sometimes even am a little bit harder on the Christians, I think, just slightly, because I'm compensating. I'm trying to like be careful to not be unfair to those who are arguing against Christians. So yeah, but yeah, thanks so much, you guys, and appreciate it. Hope you have a great night, and we'll hopefully see you tomorrow.